Kneeling on the ground, Kalfa accepted her fate, having planned to give her final moments to her homeland, Saldia, before this group captured her. Ahead of the group walked Rogue, calm and quiet, while behind him Ines watched with a wary, uncertain expression fixed on her face. Ines called out to Logue that she had finally found the woman, while Kalfa realized with dread that she had been caught at the worst possible moment. Ines asked the exhausted woman whether she was the rumored appraiser Kalfa Schneevel as Nidhogg dropped her before Rogue. Surrounding her stood skeleton soldiers, the immortal army, an undead force resurrected entirely through one necromancer's power, growing stronger with each passing year. Unlike the creatures beside her, Rogue gave off no menacing aura at all, leaving Ines to wonder whether this young man truly was the necromancer. That night deserved celebration, Ines insisted, believing Kalfa's power as one of the Saldian Empire's 7 sages would bring their long-held wish closer. Rogue questioned why she looked so exhausted, wondering whether Ines had done more than tie Kalfa with rope. Monsters were invading the Saldian Empire, Kalfa explained, and the panicked army she served had likely been defeated and driven into a corner. Leading that army herself, Kalfa watched soldiers fall one after another as the fight against the monsters slowly turned against her overwhelmed forces. Emperor Nad had fled the capital, abandoning his people entirely, and only Kalfa remained among the 7 sages to face what came next. Being captured by a necromancer on top of everything else, Rogue remarked, must feel like insult added directly to Kalfa's already grave injury. Noting that the Empire and the monsters still clashed nearby, Rogue turned toward the surrounding skeletons and stated plainly that he had a request. Desperate, Kalfa begged for her dying motherland to be saved, reasoning that trusting this undead force was worth the gamble since death awaited. Either way, Ines coldly told Kalfa to know her place, adding that she could be discarded once their true purpose was achieved. Rogue interrupted Ines, reminding her that humans besides himself were not stupid, and admitting that her words genuinely frightened him despite her calm face. Curious, Kalfa asked what their real purpose was, and Rogue answered that people's power was needed, insisting they would never treat humans like fools. Rogue asked whether she would listen to him if he saved that country from the ruin closing in on it. Vowing to give her body and mind to him, Kalfa accepted. While Rogue placed Ines in command of the immortal army and sent Nidhogg to scout enemy strength, Rogue observed that this led to the appraiser, and Ines confirmed it, agreeing to follow his orders while calling him Logue. Grateful tears welled in Kalfa's eyes as she thanked Rogue from her heart, promising to serve as their guide now that they held her fate. Squad leader urged his soldiers not to give up, insisting they would fight until the very end for the sake of their empire. Turning to Kalfa, a soldier asked whether she had the breakdown of enemy forces, and she confirmed, bracing herself for what came next. 10 goblin kings, each commanding their own generals, led a goblin-dominant force currently invading deep into the struggling Saldian Empire's territory. Rogue questioned how mere goblins ranked at most D-class could account for such devastating losses among the Empire's regular soldiers. Something felt deeply wrong about this, Kalfa admitted, since even a joined attack from lesser minotaurs shouldn't explain the scale of destruction. Imperial soldiers were being herded off a cliff by the goblin horde, Kalfa explained, expecting them to be surrounded and slaughtered without mercy. Low-ranking monsters cooperating this well seemed impossible, Kalfa argued, questioning whether the goblins had truly teamed up with the minotaurs on their own. Rogue wondered aloud whether someone else was secretly pulling the strings behind this coordinated assault. Watching the scene unfold with narrowed eyes, Rogue instructed Nidhogg to wait patiently in the sky until the Imperial soldiers grew cornered by the goblins. Ready for his signal, raising his hand toward the battlefield, Rogue declared he would release the Necromancer's pledge, unleashing the full might of his hidden army. Ines happily accepted her assignment, promising to handle the extermination of the Minotaurs entirely on her own without needing any help, transforming with dark wings spreading wide. Ines admitted it had been a long time since she last took this powerful form. Skeleton warriors surged across the battlefield in an overwhelming wave, scattering enemies apart while Kalfa watched the sheer force in stunned silence. Realizing what stood before her, Kalfa gasped, unable to believe that Nidhogg and Ines Lucifer were truly working under this young necromancer. Excited, Rogue asked whether they should get moving too, eager to join the unfolding battle rather than simply watch from a distance. Minotaurs warned each other not to lower their guard, since goblins could stab through armor the instant soldiers let their focus slip. A soldier shouted that killing the goblin general's king remained essential, though reaching him now seemed impossible with the horde stretched too far. Trapped between fire on both sides and a steep cliff ahead, the squad leader realized their group had truly been cornered. Refusing to disgrace Kalfa's name, the soldiers vowed to make their stand, remembering how she once rallied them after being abandoned by the Empire's leaders. ISEKAI'D unleashed her destructive magic upon the Minotaurs, warning the soldiers to be honored, for they were about to witness true devastation. Zombie skeletons flooded the battlefield in overwhelming numbers, assaulting the monsters from behind while soldiers stared, stunned by their master's performance. Seizing the sudden opening, the squad commander shouted that now stood as their chance to finally escape from the deadly siege. Rogue raised his hand toward the sky, unleashing his own devastating spell. The feared magic known simply as Black Hole. No mere human should hold this much magic power, a stunned soldier insisted, questioning whether what they witnessed was actually space magic. Silence settled over the battlefield as soldiers gathered together, realizing with disbelief that they had somehow survived after 8 Minotaurs fell. A soldier thanked Rogue for his earlier reinforcements, recalling the dragon and the black-winged woman who had turned the tide of battle. Introducing himself calmly, Rogue gave his name as Log Kusel, while the soldier before him struggled to process everything he had just witnessed. His true identity flashed clearly on record, marking him as a necromancer, though Rogue insisted he bore no hostility toward anyone present. Whispers of disbelief spread among the soldiers, recalling old tales of necromancers who slaughtered beautiful women and built kingdoms upon endless cruelty. Rogue explained, he simply kept his promise to Kalfa, prompting a soldier to wonder aloud why such a taboo occupation would choose to help them. Kalfa reminded herself it was finally her turn to fulfill her end of the bargain, having promised to listen once her country was saved. Rogue requested that Kalfa use her appraiser ability to help conceal his true occupation as a necromancer from the rest of the world. Startled, Kalfa asked whether he meant appraisal's rare special skill, the one known among sages simply as concealment. Kalfa agreed to keep her promise as one of the 7 sages, admitting it felt depressing to always receive reactions like the one just shown. Memories returned to Kalfa of the dragon and the black-winged lady from earlier, prompting her to finally ask who they truly were. According to old fairy tales passed through the Saldian Empire, the giant dragon was known as the legendary dragon king Nidhogg. Kalfa guessed the black-winged woman had to be Inez Lucifer, the very first demon king who once plunged the entire world into chaos. Astonished that he commanded legends from centuries past, Kalfa demanded to know what Rogue truly intended if all of this proved real. Smiling softly, Rogue admitted his purpose was simple. He only ever wanted to make friends. Nothing more, nothing hidden beneath it. A soldier praised Rogue, having finally spoken words of gratitude aloud, while another scolded him for lacking basic sense earlier. Nidhogg explained that Rogue never made a single friend since birth. Isolated entirely because of his overwhelming power and feared occupation. Turning to the soldiers, Kalfa admitted these people had truly saved them, urging everyone to change their view of necromancers immediately. Kalfa proposed one suggestion toward fulfilling her promise to Rogue, declaring the soldiers before them now stood as true heroes. Kalfa asked whether Rogue wished to become an adventurer within a guild inside the Saldian Empire, offering to hide his real occupation. Excited by the idea, Rogue accepted her proposal at once, believing becoming an adventurer might finally give him something meaningful back. Calling himself merely a lonely former necromancer, Rogue admitted his strange existence made Kalfa feel her whole world had flipped upside down. Turning toward the horizon, Kalfa declared their adventure toward making friends had begun, offering to guide him into the Saldian Empire. Since his days in the orphanage, Rogue had been alone, longing for friends while carrying the title of necromancer, a person whom death always follows. In Saldia Empire, he confirmed. His concealment was complete, then decided that hiding his true nature would end starting today, no matter the cost. Rogue celebrated with Kalfa and his loyal creatures, thrilled that disguising his occupation as an adventurer had finally given him the freedom he wanted. He thanked Kalfa for fulfilling her promise, admitting it was worth following her into the Empire just to reach this long-awaited moment. Their conversation was interrupted by a report confirming Emperor Nad Saldia had fled long ago and was later killed by an army of goblins. Kalfa was asked to keep the Emperor's shameful end private, since for now she would stand as the next head of the Empire. She advised Rogue to register as an adventurer at the capital's largest guild, assuring him an ability test would pose no real problem. Nidhogg, the legendary ancient dragon, and Inez Lucifer, the former demon king, threatened anyone who dared look down on their Lord Rogue. Rogue explained he used Art of Incarnation on his 2 most trustworthy followers, letting them keep solid forms instead of vanishing like ordinary undead. Kalfa realized these 2 were not imperfectly revived like typical immortal armies through reanimation, but were instead fully and completely revived beings. She questioned whether he had truly restored ruined remains through art of incarnation, a feat even the 7 sages of the world could not accomplish. She admitted it made sense that his rank stayed hidden without guild membership, and offered to explain everything once they reached the Adventurers Guild. Grateful, Rogue promised he would never forget her favor, and the two hurried together toward the guild to begin his new life. They agreed on where to meet again, Kalfa confirming the location before Rogue and his companions continued on without her for now. Rogue admitted he felt nervous, since this would be the first time he was seen as an adventurer instead of a necromancer. His companions teased him, insisting he would remain their lord regardless, and joked that someone like Rogue would surely be able to make friends. At the Saldia Empire Adventurers Guild called Ascalon, a cheerful worker greeted him warmly, welcoming Rogue as he stepped inside nervously. He announced he came for his occupation certification exam, catching the attention of nearby adventurers curious about the newcomer's arrival. A guild member named Ligurdo explained that affiliation would add a new element to his status, determining a specialty based on his abilities. Rogue learned his aptitude leaned towards swordsman due to his physical strength, marking the official start of his disguised adventurer life. Rogue admitted his dream was becoming an SS rank ability user someday, and Ligurdo told him diligent guild requests could reveal his true specialty. On-Examiner explained that Kalfa Schneevel held SS rank in intelligence, making her the strongest existence among mankind besides the 7 sages, then asked Rogue to place his hand on the crystal. The examiner noticed she could not see what was inside the bracket that read Occupation, Adventurer, Necromancer, leaving her confused about his hidden status. His full status appeared with SSS across every category and experience points reaching 99 million, stunning everyone gathered in the guild hall. The crowd insisted such numbers had to be a bug. Unable to accept that ability values this excellent could belong to a single person. Nidhogg and Innes laughed among themselves, recalling how their lord once tried conquering the world and got defeated countless times before this outcome. A gruff man named Gran silenced the excited bystanders, warning them not to get worked up over a brat before their own promotion exam began. Summono accused Rogue of altering the crystal, refusing to believe an SSS rank could exist since nobody there had witnessed one before. The examiner declared his status showed signs of concealment and tampering, promising the group would soon discover what Rogue could truly do. Gran was reminded it was time for his own promotion exam, taking the A rank challenge for the second time after his previous attempt. Log called out to him, wanting to talk more later, while his companions waved and celebrated his acknowledgement as a certified adventurer. He resolved that getting recognized as an adventurer came first, believing friendship would follow, while Innes threatened anyone who insulted her lord earlier. Kalfa questioned whether avoiding friendship with people who spoke badly about Log was truly acceptable, catching him off guard with her impoliteness remark. At Delaware Valley, the guild exam venue, an examiner thanked everyone for their hard work before announcing the details of that day's exam. Everyone startled as Kalfa Schneevel revealed she personally would be in charge of the exam, surprising the group gathered inside the valley. She explained the recent monster attack proved this country lacked enough military strength, so she wanted to assess everyone's ability herself. Moving forward, she introduced Group 1 led by Log Kusel, alongside 2 other groups taking their promotion exam that same day. Group 2 was Dreadfire, a C-class team led by Ligurdo Siphon, while Group 3 was Regulus Heart, a B-class team led by Gran Kalma. Kalfa asked if everyone felt ready, and each team member responded eagerly, determined to give their best effort during the exam ahead. She revealed the dungeon's final 10th floor held a boss named Orochi, which Regulus Heart needed to defeat for their A-rank promotion. Kalfa explained passing the promotion exam required delivering all 8 of Orochi's heads, a beast known for 8 heads and spitting neurotoxins. 3 members of Regulus Heart received their mission and reacted with shock, admitting Orochi remained a fairly strong type even among its own rank. Meanwhile, Log received a simple cleaning mission on the first floor, prompting Kalfa and Innes to encourage him with playful cheers before he departed. Log realized helping people through such duties could build genuine trust, excited to learn an adventurer's purpose extended beyond simple combat and monster hunting. Kalfa explained the first floor stayed full of trash from monster corpses and littering, leaving the cleanup task entirely in Log's capable hands. She then addressed the members of Dreadfire, assigning their B-rank exam as subjugating the 6th floor's boss, a dangerous pack of muscle wolves. Since clearing Log's exam would take around 2 hours, Kalfa decided she might show her face during Ligurdo's exam if time allowed later. Kalfa entered the first floor cave, admiring the scenery while wondering whether Gran and the others had already descended toward lower dungeon floors. Ligurdo suggested they wait and observe how Log worked, curious to see the man whose abilities registered entirely within the mysterious SS rank. Onlookers doubted someone with such abilities could truly exist, assuming instead that his impossible status resulted from some defect within the crystal itself. Kalfa wondered aloud what Logue and the others had been doing, remembering he never bought supplies despite having time to prepare beforehand. Ligurdo noted Logue should have purchased a storage bag, worried the Necromancer might struggle without proper equipment during his simple cleaning mission. Logue unleashed Typhoon, a dragon attribute magic spell that tore through the battlefield with tremendous force, clearing debris scattered across the first floor. He then summoned Black Hole, a destructive magic technique Nidhogg once taught him. Eager to try the dangerous spell for the very first time, Logue turned back nervously, asking if his work looked acceptable, unaware Kalfa had just witnessed the fastest floor-clearing record set in 5 seconds. The Adventurer Certification exam ended successfully, with all trash completely removed, confirming Logue had passed his assigned task without any difficulty whatsoever. Eanes and Kalfa celebrated, praising his magnificent magic while Logue expressed pure joy over accomplishing his very first adventurer mission. Kalfa grew quiet, reflecting that if his SS rank proved genuine, Logue's presence in this country made him far from ordinary. Then chaos erupted as an emergency struck the 10th floor where Regulus Heart fought Orochi. Rogue watched Ligurdo proudly explain adventuring basics while marching lower throughout perilous Delaware Vale. Kalfa encouraged nervous Rogue beside quiet Inez before strange transportation transported everyone underground safely. Ligurdo charged recklessly towards snarling creatures, shouting fearlessly while massive beasts assaulted brutally nearby. Terrified comrades screamed desperately as Ligurdo slashed continually, compelling savage creatures backward over battlefields. Nidhogg criticized weak creatures beside confused Inez while amazed Rogue respected Ligurdo's overpowering power. Kalfa warned drained Ligurdo cautiously while dwindling healing supplies endangered their reckless creature expedition. Rogue praised teamwork genuinely beside smiling Kalfa as Inez questioned unnecessary risks throughout fights. He abruptly sensed abnormal pressure close by as Nidhogg and Kalfa observed his reaction. Inez disclosed disturbing information concerning Delaware Valley's enigmatic 10th level while Rogue investigated. Rogue hurried fearlessly towards perilous depths, leaving stunned Kalfa and fretted Inez standing speechless. Gran reported perilous circumstances urgently, while exhausted adventurers assembled anxiously around injured companions nearby. Numerous goblins surrounded struggling adventurers as Orochi creatures overwhelmed defenders throughout Delaware Valley entirely. Gran commanded frightened adventurers aggressively as monstrous attackers cornered defenseless fighters throughout chaotic combat near. Enemy creatures progressed relentlessly while desperate adventurers weighed retreating before overwhelming magical assaults arrived abruptly. Gran refused requesting assistance proudly, while Rogue and Kalfa watched hazardous examination fights wordlessly nearby. Violent Orochi attacks struck exhausted adventurers as Gran criticized reckless complaints throughout perilous combat. Terrifying creatures descended aggressively while frightened adventurers understood overpowering foes completely surrounded their weakened formation. Rogue volunteered confronting Orochi personally while ordering remaining adventurers instantly petition reinforcements upstairs. Gran encouraged determined Rogue bravely while wounded adventurers awaited frantically required assistance from near allies. He protected vulnerable comrades carefully as monstrous assaults continued smashing relentlessly throughout chaotic battlegrounds. Gran discovered poisonous wounds spreading rapidly as exhausted adventurers dreaded inevitable defeat approaching close by frantically. He continued battling ferocious monsters fiercely in spite of weakening injuries damaging his drained body severely near. Violent enemy attacks struck Gran directly while encircling adventurers observed horrifying fighting unfold helplessly near. Gran ordered frightened healers escape instantly as monstrous creatures chased defenseless survivors throughout dangerous battlegrounds. Wounded Gran encouraged escaping comrades composedly, while determined survivors promised returning quickly with reinforcements near. Gran apologized quietly while preparing prohibited dragon magic alongside exhausted comrade under dark cavern. Violent dragon breath exploded forward, destroying countless creatures around injured adventurers throughout Delaware Valley. Surviving adventurers watched enormous destruction wordlessly while Gran collapsed weakly alongside terrified allies nearby. Rogue rushed towards wounded Gran immediately while fretted healers trailed closely through lingering smoke. Gran and remaining adventurers stared speechlessly following recognizing mysterious Rogue suddenly reaching hazardous battlegrounds. Rogue reached exhausted adventurers unexpectedly, while remaining healers healed heavily injured Gran cautiously. Rogue clarified sensing hazardous magic earlier while apologizing helplessly for Gran's severe injuries genuinely. Gran thanked Rogue gratefully, as eased adventurers commended courageous assistance throughout desperate battles nearby. He promised informing Kalfa truthfully regarding Rogue's heroic actions, despite questionable examination irregularities at once. Sudden devastating magic erupted violently beneath survivors while crumbling terrain frightened nearby adventurers completely. Gran guided surviving adventurers carefully towards collapsed ruins beneath Delaware Valley's hazardous 10th level underground. Rogue confirmed hidden 11th floor existence while stunned adventurers questioned unbelievable discoveries beneath hazardous caverns near. Curious adventurers investigated enigmatic underground passageways carefully while debris scattered throughout ruined cavern pathways everywhere. Rogue realized unnatural structures existed underground while examining dubious construction marks alongside terrified companions cautiously. Gran found abandoned adventurer weapons sorrowfully while discussing vanished exploration parties from earlier hazardous expeditions. Gran clarified missing adventurers usually requested reinforcements prior to disappearing completely under hazardous underground ruins. Kalfa and Inez reached hurriedly underground as checking Rogue and Gran's hazardous investigation progress. Rogue sensed ominous danger while confused adventurers reviewed enigmatic underground holes carefully together. Gran discovered Imperial military equipment underground as Kalfa identified Saldia Empire insignias cautiously alongside scattered debris. Gran questioned Imperial corruption while discussing questionable Imperial involvement surrounding Delaware Vale disappearances. Missing adventurer parties and unbelievable goblin raids increased quickly throughout Delaware Vale. Inez talked about decreasing guild extermination requests while adventurers fought obtaining essential healing elixirs. Gran clarified corrupted officials prevented adventurers investigating questionable incidents surrounding Delaware Vale disappearances. Stunned Rogue fretted hazardous conspiracies might prevent achieving legitimate adventurer status inside Saldia Empire. Kalfa promised revealing hidden truths truthfully while explaining mysterious Imperial corruption encircling perilous underground incidents. Kalfa spotted remote sobbing echoes underground while cautious adventurers investigated unfamiliar tunnels beneath Delaware Vale. A frightened elf girl begged frantically for assistance while stunned Rogue and Needhog identified something suspicious underground. They discovered frightened elven woman girl inhabiting forbidden examination floors as allies carefully investigated caverns. Rogue calmly reassured wounded elf as checking conditions alongside nervous adventurers within underground passages. Kalfa clarified persecuted elven people got empire protection despite enduring slavery, discrimination, and historical suffering. The elf girl frantically requested assistance rescuing surviving residents while collapsing before Rogue's companions. Rogue learned remaining elves originally inhabited eastern woodlands prior to unknown dangers ruined their settlement. The elf girl revealed mysterious people ruined villages, compelling captured elves producing healing elixirs. Rogue discovered abused elves suffering brutal punishments while scared elven woman girl urgently defended villagers. Rogue comforted crying her gently as Kalfa understood humans orchestrated kidnappings behind concealed missions. Kalfa explained elves produced healing potions across the nation as suspecting manipulators directed empire distribution systems. Rogue courteously asked her name. Scared elf disclosed that her name was Michaela Tikulit. Rogue questioned Michaela carefully while Kalfa cautioned hazardous monsters grew increasingly brutal. Kalfa desperately stopped Rogue from approaching lower underground while Michaela anxiously watched. Rogue clarified adventurers protected helpless civilians while strange underground lights all at once illuminated cavern walls. He called forth undead creatures confidently, declaring nighttime territories belonged entirely under Necromancer control and control. Kalfa fretted Rogue's Necromancer identity risked exposure while he prioritized defending endangered residents. Multiple adventurers insisted accompanying Rogue despite hazardous circumstances while veteran fighters questioned their capabilities. Inez grew embarrassed listening to misunderstandings regarding Rogue as adventurers discussed reporting discoveries. Rogue organized companions cautiously while Michaela guided terrified adventurers lower. Imperial soldiers brutally endangered frightened residents, searching aggressively for missing elf survivor Michaela throughout settlements. Corrupt officers ordered age-old dragon seals removed, planning devastating underground attacks using prohibited magical powers. Dishonest soldiers triggered prohibited magical seals underground as commanding hidden creatures. An enormous dragon called Asgard appeared violently, frightening nearby residents and panicking Imperial troops. Frightened civilians frantically escaped rampaging chaos while enigmatic figures approached hazardous. Kalfa confronted advancing soldiers bravely as Rogue's comrades observed unfolding confrontations throughout underground settlements. Imperial soldiers demanded personas suspiciously while encircling advancing adventurers throughout damaged underground village pathways. Kalfa revealed Imperial control openly while demanding troops identify affiliations directing captured elven woman territories. Kalfa realized surrounding monsters followed organized commands as aggressive creatures forcefully progressed. Dishonest officers arrogantly endangered adventurers while relying upon fabled dragon descendant Asgard. Rogue permitted Nidhogg confronting age-old dragons as unleashing prohibited necromancy powers throughout underground battlefields. Asgard mocked approaching Nidhogg as dishonest troops instructed devastating flames. Asgard aggressively attacked Nidhogg straight as massive explosions erupted throughout underground battlefield surroundings. Nidhogg unleashed mighty Yggdrasil attacks boldly, compelling Asgard retreating backward throughout intense aerial combat sequences. It ridiculed Asgard haughtily while criticizing descendants lacking intelligence, communication abilities, and proper magical understanding entirely. Nidhogg clarified age-old dragons possessed multidimensional magic, capable stealing powerful skills through enigmatic written letters. It warned overpowering power prevented manipulation as dragons battled fiercely throughout perilous underground territories continuously. Corrupt official haughtily underestimated Rogue while triggering hazardous magical formations. Aggressive troops launched mighty fire magic assaults attempting eliminating Rogue. Rogue calmly analyzed incoming magical assaults while preparing countermeasures versus overpowering devastating battlefield powers. Nidhogg clarified immense powers required direct confrontation because evasive actions proved entirely ineffective throughout battles. Rogue triggered fire enchantments confidently while preparing decisive assaults versus approaching enemies. Rogue unleashed mighty enchanted flames, shocking corrupt officers witnessing impossible magical abilities throughout fighting suddenly. Terrified soldiers retreated nervously as enigmatic black flames continued spreading dangerously throughout underground battlefields quickly. Rogue confronted dishonest officers directly, while questioning brutal actions committed versus helpless elf residents previously. Rogue smiled composedly toward frightened magicians before abruptly launching devastating attacks without hesitation near instantly. Nidhogg's destructive attacks struck enemy forces violently as explosions overwhelmed frightened troops throughout underground territories simultaneously. Rogue released powerful enchanted flames, shocking dishonest officers witnessing unbelievable magical skills. Frightened soldiers retreated anxiously while enigmatic black flames continued spreading dangerously. Rogue confronted dishonest officers directly while questioning brutal actions committed versus helpless elf residents previously. He smiled calmly toward terrified magicians before abruptly launching devastating assaults lacking hesitation. Nidhogg's destructive attacks struck enemy forces violently as explosions overwhelmed frightened troops throughout underground territories. Nidhogg launched devastating attacks continually while Asgard shrieked painfully throughout immense underground. Asgard slammed violently underground while Nidhogg confidently clarified unbelievable victories needed stronger opponents. Rogue listened gladly while Nidhogg outlined learning alongside powerful individuals improving private growth significantly. Nidhogg acknowledged surpassing Rogue remained unbelievable as acknowledging overwhelming necromancer skills and intelligence. Kalfa and Inez reunited alongside Rogue as Nidhogg watched peaceful underground surroundings. Inez jokingly apologized while enormous overcame creatures surrounded drained adventurers. Mikaela gratefully appreciated Rogue since saved villagers survived safely despite horrifying underground. Captured officers trembled fearfully as Kalfa investigated Empire connections behind brutal elven woman exploitation missions. Kalfa readied interrogation magic determinedly, forcing imprisoned troops, revealing concealed conspiracies. Kalfa asked captured soldiers as Rogue investigated kidnappings, including underground elven woman transportation. Captured officers rejected betraying military secrets despite threats, protecting questionable Empire responsibilities. Kalfa activated appraisal magic carefully while warning troops regarding unavoidable consequences throughout perilous interrogations. She exposed hidden military information publicly using powerful compelled disclosure skills versus frightened officers. Kalfa explained appraisal techniques, disclosed private statuses unwillingly while captured troops protested furiously. Rogue discovered Balra Empire covertly controlled alliances while conducting hazardous underground operations. Kalfa regretted exposing soldiers openly while comrades recognized appraisal abilities caused uncomfortable revelations. Rogue discussed Balra Empire's magical dominance while Kalfa clarified mighty wise ones directing extraordinary abilities. Inez ridiculed Kalfa jokingly while discussing legendary sages and Rogue's overpowering influence within allies. Kalfa clarified heroic titles earned defeating fiends while introducing mighty international elite fighting specialists. Inez recalled calm years previously while discussing lowered monster assaults alongside Rogue and Nidhogg. Rogue casually remembered punishing dangerous creatures previously as Kalfa responded anxiously. Kalfa clarified weakened alliances enabled victories while promising imprisoned Balra troops stayed secured. Kalfa sincerely apologized publicly while Mikaela appreciated allies gratefully for defending defenseless villagers. Michaela disclosed extra kidnapped elven people existed elsewhere while describing strange transportation magic circles. Kalfa discovered progressed teleportation circles underground while comrades investigated enigmatic magical transportation. Balra Empire covertly stole healing elixir techniques through illegal underground operations, including kidnapped elves. Kalfa warned political clashes prevented immediate investigations as Rogue worried kidnapped elven people stayed endangered. She triggered purification sealing magic effectively, while Rogue watched disappearing teleportation circles. Kalfa reassured rescued residents patiently while awaiting Imperial soldiers arriving, defending everyone inside underground. Rogue cheerfully departed underground settlements as Michaela wordlessly observed companions leaving. He exited caverns gladly before Inez brought pressing messages regarding Ligurdo. Rogue apologized awkwardly as Inez explained, unintentionally stepping upon vital letters carelessly throughout travels. He excitedly imagined veteran adventurer responsibilities as Kalfa heard. Kalfa joked with Rogue's exploring fantasy while Nidhogg interrupted conversations, pressing immediate departure from caverns. Kalfa received pressing contact abruptly while armored adventurers approached, requesting immediate crucial decisions. She remembered former companions emotionally as preparing her own self confronting perilous upcoming fights. Rogue found Ascalon's darkened buildings while companions investigated questionable surroundings carefully throughout nighttime patrols. He entered perilous buildings despite warnings while Nidhogg trusted veteran adventurer instructions, completely lacking hesitation. Hidden adventurers astonished Rogue, celebrating his effective examination completion within brightly illuminated headquarters. Rogue panicked suddenly throughout celebrations while Inez and Nidhogg observed puzzling situations. Ligurdo brightly greeted Rogue enthusiastically while introducing Ascalon's famous newcomer celebration team. He commended Rogue kindly, while Nidhogg acknowledged companions respected their dependable exploring leader. Inez observed Rogue smiling within companions, realizing isolation disappeared completely from earlier experiences. Nidhogg explained Rogue defended comrades kindly despite strict behavior towards devoted servants occasionally. People reflected silently upon Rogue's solitary past as Rogue and Inez strolled peacefully. Inez remembered Rogue sacrificing himself while employing forbidden powers, defending companions from hazardous foes. Inez hoped Rogue eventually attained sincere happiness while observing his happy expressions alongside companions. Rogue smiled sincerely beside companions while Inez understood his long-awaited happiness eventually reached fully. Inez quietly appreciated Rogue's companions genuinely for transforming his solitary existence into meaningful joy. Ligurdo enthusiastically invited Rogue celebrating near, while Gran and others assembled joyfully around. Rogue uneasily entered cheerful celebrations while eager adventurers encouraged unceasing eating and drinking. Ligurdo encouraged Rogue assuredly as explaining guild members deserved recognition, fellowship, and supportive friendships. Rogue happily acknowledged relief knowing Gran survived safely while comrades celebrated friendships together kindly near afterwards. Rogue silently understood sincere comrades surrounded him as drunken adventurers celebrated joyfully. Rogue enjoyed cheerful fellowship as he wondered whether adventurers eventually became sincere, trusted friends. He spotted unfamiliar visitors all at once entering celebrations while comrades observed enigmatic arrivals. Michaela appeared, introduced her own self nervously, explaining Rogue's comrades saved her previously from perilous underground. She bowed respectfully before Rogue while genuinely requesting permission entering his team. Michaela explained admiring Rogue's kindness deeply while wanting helping vulnerable individuals using private power courageously. Rogue kindly agreed Michaela's petition while softly comforting nervous emotions. He clarified relied on comrades protected each other while welcoming Michaela comfortably into cheerful celebrations as one. Michaela in tears appreciated Rogue sincerely as expressing surprise, receiving acceptance and kindness rapidly. She happily presented herself enthusiastically while Inez watched excited behavior alongside puzzled Nidhogg. A guard approached the Lord, while moonglow illuminated quiet castle walls beyond peacefully. The Lord composedly reassured frightened troops while investigating enigmatic teleportation failures encircling Gelat's sudden disappearance. He confidently dismissed growing worries, claiming closed transportation circles simply represented short-term political examinations internally. Meanwhile, Rogue reassured Michaela softly, hiding perilous suspicions behind smiling expressions while complicated conspiracies appeared. Rogue grew inside orphan home walls, receiving prohibited necromancer skills despite lacking homeland. Undead creatures followed smiling Rogue constantly, forcing solitary isolation throughout childhood among terrified encircling residents. Rogue wanted genuine friendships profoundly, watching cheerful children together as surviving separated emotionally from everybody. Fiends destroyed Rogue's orphan home abruptly, leaving him wandering abandoned wilderness carrying harsh memories alone. Rogue went into Sardia Empire commanding undead troops, pursuing friendships while remaining hazardous solitary necromancer responsibilities. Rogue officially grew adventurer next to Inez, Nidhogg, and supportive appraiser Kalfa throughout sunrise ceremonies. Michaela enthusiastically welcomed Rogue's arrival inside bustling inn, gladly entering his adventurous journeying team. Rogue awkwardly agreed Michaela's admiration, appreciating companionship while discussing isolation alongside cheerful morning conversations. Kalfa and Nidhogg carefully evaluated Michaela's concealed healing abilities as observing questionable behavior close by. Inez praised youthful Rogue with pride, while Nidhogg sternly criticized Michaela's unsure healing capabilities openly. Michaela spotted scars covering Nidhogg's wings, offering healing assistance assuredly alongside curious Rogue. Activated healing magic cautiously, Michaela repairing Nidhogg's age-old fight scars completely inside moments. Nidhogg expressed sincere surprise as Michaela with pride clarified lifelong healing training from childhood experiences. Michaela outlined remote homeland origins silently, avoiding detailed explanations regarding isolated elven territories suspiciously. Inez understood Michaela's homeland disappeared completely, understanding her harsh isolation and wandering isolation alone. Rogue listened cautiously while Michaela outlined solitary travels over villages before reaching Sardia Empire. Nidhogg sensed no malicious intentions from Michaela, eventually trusting her gentle healing skills entirely. Kalfa recognized Michaela's impressive healing talents, while Rogue responded uneasily towards embarrassing compliments humorously. Rogue greeted Michaela kindly as companion adventurer, encouraging friendship while Kalfa endorsed supportive partnership. Michaela gratefully accepted Rogue's kindness prior to joyfully exploring Imperial streets beside flying Nidhogg. Inez questioned Rogue softly about friendships while Ascalon members departed peacefully following happy celebrations as one. Rogue acknowledged overwhelming happiness excitedly, appreciating companionship events never encountered throughout earlier solitary childhood circumstances. Rogue recalled guild members welcoming him kindly, celebrating together alongside Ligordo and Gran enthusiastically. Kalfa smiled proudly beside Rogue as questionable strangers watched their peaceful conversation wordlessly. Unidentified person neared Rogue and Inez carefully, questioning their destination. Gold confronted Rogue aggressively beside questionable companions, requiring adventurer standing details. Rogue misunderstood endangering extortion completely, reacting enthusiastically while thinking experienced adventurers recognized him. He proudly presented beginner status dutifully, puzzling Gold through cheerful admiration towards veteran adventurers. Gold mocked Rogue's beginner rank harshly, requiring excessive payment alongside intimidating comrades threateningly. Rogue apologized genuinely regarding poverty, while Kalfa silently prepared responding versus foolish endangering adventurers. Inez provided surviving coins peacefully while Rogue attempted resolving perilous confrontation. Rogue followed veteran adventurer customs sincerely as Kalfa observed endangering behavior furiously. Gold demanded Kalfa harshly, creating Rogue's cheerful attitude immediately disappear under rising anger. Rogue released forward, striking violently prior to extortionist realized his overpowering physical capabilities. Rogue condemned disrespectful behavior coldly, protecting loyal companions as horrifying aggressive adventurers through overpowering intimidation. Rogue overcame Gold swiftly, leaving terrified comrades panicking alongside unconscious leader. Hostile adventurer attempted destruction magic angrily as Rogue protected Kalfa from perilous approaching assaults. Rogue immediately neutralized foe spells entirely, shocking attackers through overpowering cancellation magic abilities. Rogue respectfully left surviving bronze coins behind, apologizing genuinely toward overcame unconscious adventurer leader. He thanked overcame veteran politely while Kalfa respected his power and compassionate personality. Overcame adventurers swore revenge versus Rogue as cautioned Inez could slaughter everyone. Michaela reacted excitedly beside floating Nidhogg, recognizing Rogue's frightening reputation within perilous encircling adventurers immediately. Ligurdo came back exhausted alongside drunken Ascalon members, battling recovering from overpowering celebration activities. Makola hurriedly treated wounded adventurers cautiously while confused guild members watched impressive healing magic. Ligurdo celebrated enthusiastically following Makola entirely removed alcohol damage through extraordinary healing skills. Makola cured severe hangovers entirely, while Ligurdo and Gran questioned enigmatic happy healer. Rogue welcomed companions energetically, while Inez grumbled furiously regarding unpleasant guild odors. Rogue introduced enthusiastic Michaela with pride, describing her openly as his private disciple before seniors. Michaela welcomed Ligordo and Gran courteously as Rogue clarified their actual instructor responsibilities. Ligordo guided Rogue towards reception desk as exhausted receptionist acknowledged his beginner adventurer's standing. Rogue received beginner request forms while comrades observed silently alongside drained guild receptionist. Ligordo recommended basic slime extermination missions enthusiastically while Rogue reviewed official petition documentation. Rogue declared determined aspirations proudly, promising hard-working efforts next to promoting Ligurdo and Gran. Guild members cheered energetically while receptionists stayed drained, watching motivated adventurers leave headquarters as one. Receptionist discovered hazardous dragon warnings attached unexpectedly. Realizing Rogue agreed extremely hazardous novice mission unknowingly, Receptionist reassured herself anxiously, thinking sleeping dragons remained harmless, lacking reckless large-scale magical disturbances. Rogue, Michaela, Inez, and Nidhogg departed cheerfully unknowingly advancing hazardous dragons through carefree confidence together within woodlands ahead. Michaela demonstrated fire against slimes while Rogue watched Gora Forest's hazardous environment cautiously. Rogue accepted his first extermination request, traveling lower across woodlands, searching slimes alongside allies. Gran and Ligurdo supervised Michaela cautiously as Rogue appreciated his new teammates' healing skills. Ligurdo clarified multiplying slime's forest behavior while sweating heavily under overpowering summer temperatures. Rogue reluctantly separated from companions, smiling uneasily as continuing adventures independently throughout unfamiliar regions. Ines and Nidhogg avoided sunlight exhaustion as guarding Rogue's undead force alongside swamp territories. Michaela apologized sorrowfully since her offensive magic stayed ineffective against slimes surrounding near adventurers. Michaela tearfully confessed insecurities while Rogue reassured her abilities remained precious throughout perilous tasks. Rogue urged Michaela genuinely, explaining talented adventurers rarely mastered offensive and defensive skills simultaneously. Michaela gratefully pledged improvement while Gran and Ligurdo uneasily watched Rogue's encouraging leadership. Rogue clarified battle formations, assigning Michaela rear support while Inez defended hazardous front lines. Michaela understood foes targeted vulnerable supporters initial, forming advantages whenever defensive healers disappeared. Rogue commended Michaela's correct reasoning, reminding healers defensive priorities mattered prior to reckless battlefield assaults occurred. Michaela enthusiastically agreed Rogue's suggestion, readying coming missions requiring stronger defensive magical abilities training. Ligurdo and Gran supported Rogue's proposal, recommending hazardous golem extermination missions, reinforcing defensive fighting experience. Rogue entrusted Gran temporarily, readying separate training activities while comrades watched uncertainly. He borrowed Ligurdo's blade, surprising companions in spite of claiming ordinary weapons stayed entirely sufficient. Rogue activated Dragon Affinity Enchant, reinforcing borrowed blades while encircling slimes assembled close by, curiously together. He released Dragonica Strength, slicing advancing slimes apart using enchanted blade techniques effortlessly. Rogue grinned confidently while overcame slimes disappeared completely, allowing drained adventurers returning safely towards civilization. Michaela respected Rogue's overwhelming abilities as Ligordo and Gran quietly acknowledged extraordinary magical fighting tea. Ligordo excitedly questioned Rogue's enchantment skills, growing astonished discovering mighty magic. Ligurdo frantically requested training from Rogue, hoping blade enchantments improved his coming adventuring combat abilities. Rogue awkwardly accepted their enthusiasm while allies assembled gladly throughout quiet forest surroundings. Rogue triggered Aludor compound magic, combining fire and wind elements into devastating swirling assaults. Rogue abruptly canceled devastating magic attacks, sensing unfamiliar disturbances advancing close by forest battlefields. Suddenly named Gold appeared beside hooded followers, confronting Rogue brightly within hazardous woodlands. He mocked Rogue playfully while attacking, compelling nearby comrades reacting cautiously versus unforeseen confrontations. Gold proudly introduced powerful allies assembled from Imperial civilians, displaying overpowering confidence before Rogue's comrades. Fulfilled pledged arrangements brutally, Gold capturing Rogue publicly while encircling enemies celebrated effective ambush operations. Ligurdo and Gran abruptly spotted gigantic shadows descending quickly across nearby battlefield. The team stared upward anxiously, stunned by frightening creatures appearing across forest skies. Hooded followers freaked instantly following witnessing massive red and white dragons roaring brutally. The enormous dragons attacked carelessly, crushing enemies brutally while horrified hooded followers shrieked frantically. Remaining followers hurriedly mentioned Void, creating Rogue and Ligurdo questioning enigmatic hazardous individuals. Hooded followers confidently readied defeating gigantic dragons, assembling hazardous magical energy together. Gold frantically begged dragons, delaying assaults temporarily, while complicated magical formations surrounded terrified followers. Ligurdo realized foes concentrated overpowering magical power simultaneously, astonishing Rogue and nearby comrades considerably. Michaela worried nervously, while Rogue recognized enemies employing extremely hazardous magical ways versus dragons. Ignoring comrades' warnings, Rogue composedly approached battlefields, alone readying confronting massive dragons. Rogue entrusted Michaela's safety towards Gran, while frightening screams echoed over chaotic battlefields. Hooded followers triggered powerful party magic, summoning gigantic enchanted hammers, targeting aggressive dragons. Massive magical hammers hit charging dragons brutally, compelling airborne creatures roaring painfully during assaults. One dragon suffered destructive impacts straight, crashing downward as magical explosions shattered close-by surroundings. Barrier magic suddenly protected surviving followers, obstructing dragons' assaults while enemies freaked urgently. Enraged dragons shattered magical barriers instantly, frightening hooded followers protecting themselves urgently. Followers panicked loudly following dragons destroyed barrier magic, fully employing devastating physical power effortlessly. Horrified followers understood massive dragons possessed SS-ranked power, greatly exceeding their perilous magical expectations. Exhausted followers lost surviving mana reserves, while dragons kept assaulting relentlessly throughout chaotic battlefields. Rogue confronted attacking dragons composedly, criticizing reckless behavior while readying ending perilous clashes. Rogue confronted the dragon, warning reckless provocations endangered encircling travelers and close-by settlements. Masked criminals freaked instantly while Rogue demanded returning kidnapped civilians prior to continuing magical confrontations. Rogue unleashed Dragon Strike magic assuredly, recalling Nidhogg's teachings throughout hazardous battlefield encounter. The massive dragon descended furiously, releasing Yggdraverse attacks throughout woodlands while foes scattered urgently. The massive dragon bellowed violently overhead, frightening escaping enemies across destroyed wilderness areas beneath. The enormous dragon observed quietly, while enigmatic magic spheres surrounded terrified enemies. The massive dragon crushed gigantic projectiles, shocking nearby enemies witnessing overpowering devastating physical strength. Retreating criminals panicked desperately after witnessing frightening flames, surpassing earlier assaults across encircling battlefields. Rogue watched fleeing enemies, assuring terrified opponents escape distances remained entirely meaningless versus overpowering strength. He triggered Destruction Magic Black Hole, instantly swallowing incoming assaults through destructive gravitational magical force. Rogue composedly controlled strange black spheres floating before close-by foes dangerously. He redirected compressed energy, preparing another destructive magical strike versus advancing aggressive opponents. Rogue dodged massive attacks smoothly while the enormous dragon continued charging devastating flames. Rogue apologized gently before ordering weary dragons peacefully hibernate before spring arrived throughout remote mountains. Gold screamed helplessly as enormous dragon jaws released him violently throughout crumbling forest surroundings below. Gran, Ligurdo, and Michaela watched wordlessly as enormous dragons slammed heavily. Rogue observed departing enemies cautiously while puzzled survivors talked about strange voids frightening authority. Michaela reported Gold escaping rapidly while Rogue resolved rescuing exhausted dragon remained priority instantly. Rogue clarified sleeping dragons survived safely, choosing returning disturbed creatures towards initial nests personally. Michaela healed injured dragons cautiously, thinking awakened creatures suffered lingering pain across wounded bodies. Ligurdo commended Michaela warmly as Rogue triggering spatial magic, transporting dragons. Rogue joyfully clarified dimensional transportation methods, while Michaela and Ligurdo respected impressive magical skills nearby. Gran explained elves protected healing traditions historically, exchanging woodlands for precious recovery elixir creation nationwide. Gran described Luciella Sardia's efforts, explaining reduced adventurer fatalities through available restorative potions everywhere nationwide. Rogue discussed fallen Emperor Nad silently before returning dragons, before strangers abruptly interrupted near conversations. Ligurdo and Gran discussed Rogue, realizing he overcame perilous SSS-level dragons completely alone. A waiter welcomed Rogue's team kindly within Ascalon's Adventurer Guild headquarters. The party clarified remaining difficult fights while receptionists listened cautiously. Rogue submitted completed mission reports uneasily, explaining troublesome slime encounters throughout perilous forest investigations lately. The embarrassed receptionist apologized repeatedly towards Rogue genuinely, regretting misunderstandings encircling. The receptionist expressed regret in tears as Rogue and Gran reassured her regarding earlier misunderstandings. Near adventurers learning Rogue defeated 2 terrifying SS-level dragons throughout tasks. Crowded adventurers surrounded Rogue, requiring explanations regarding mysterious SS-level achievements and hazardous fights. Kelfa all at once emerged inside bustling headquarters, shocking Rogue while puzzled adventurers watched. She approached Rogue, requesting private discussions as encircling adventurers observed curiously. Kalfa invited Rogue towards the cathedral privately, while confused companions watched unforeseen discussions. She clarified someone important awaited meetings there, inviting Mikalea beside Rogue courteously. Rogue clarified cathedral purposes uneasily while searching curiously for lost Inez and Nidhogg. Kalfa questioned Rogue's undead army origins cautiously, as listening to explanations regarding ruined skeletal forces. Rogue clarified unfortunate conditions truthfully, explaining uncontrolled necromancy unintentionally formed unwilling undead followers. Rogue recalled demon invasions sorrowfully, explaining lonely necromancy pursuits originated from harsh orphanage endurance events. Kalfa listened carefully, as Rogue described maintaining short-term peace in spite of widespread hate and suffering. Rogue smiled genuinely, thinking peaceful futures required stopping unceasing growth within undead armies. Kalfa reassured Rogue, explaining the Sardia Empire kept recovering in spite of destructive wartime hardships. She guided Rogue within cathedral halls, introducing influential individuals supporting coming empire advancements and stability. Rogue, Kalfa, and Michaela entered gigantic cathedral halls silently, while armored guards monitored remote corridors. Michaela gasped excitedly next to Rogue, amazed by enormous architecture surrounding heavily defended regal chambers. Kalfa clarified royal heir Luciella rarely appeared, assuming responsibilities following Emperor Nad's sudden departure lately from duties. Kalfa respectively presented Rogue and Michaela before kneeling towards awaiting imperial royalty within cathedral chambers. Luciella questioned Rogue carefully while Michaela watched uneasily alongside Kalfa throughout quiet cathedral audiences. Rogue and Michaela responded in shock after discovering Sardia's respected regal princess, Luciella Sardia, was an elf. Royal heir Luciella Sardia greeted Rogue's comrades kindly, seeking cooperation between elves and adventurers peacefully. Kalfa verified Luciella descended straight from Emperor Nad, astonishing Rogue and nearby companions considerably. Michaela defended Kalfa respectfully, rejecting ruler Nad entirely, in spite of sharing familial connections through bloodlines. Kalfa clarified ruler Nad's foolish leadership gradually worsened political clashes throughout neighboring territories severely. Luciella revealed ruler Nad exploited countless elven women, creating tragic births containing Michaela herself. Luciella outlined corrupted elves disappearing covertly while Emperor Nad continued exploiting defenseless women. Kalfa understood Emperor Nad concealed destroyed villages, dropping wounded elves lacking proper healing support. Michaela determined terrible crimes occurred underground because isolated residents lacked communication with encircling civilizations. Luciella bowed genuinely prior to Rogue's companions, apologizing publicly for ruler Nad's unforgivable actions committed. Michaela instantly reassured Luciella softly, insisting innocent descendants never deserved responsibility regarding historical atrocities themselves. Michaela clarified mixed bloodlines usually form difficulties because elves and people rarely reproduced. Kalfa commended Luciella's strange talents while Michaela embarrassedly denied possessing extraordinary magical skills. Rogue listened while Michaela outlined astrology as uncommon knowledge realized by very limited specialists globally. The princess demonstrated astrology employing magical cards, predicting national events through actions watched among remote stars. Luciella cautioned Rogue's companions suspicious celestial movements indicated hazardous incidents advancing encircling territories very soon. Rogue recognized Princess Luciella immediately, while Kalfa and allies reacted carefully alongside him wordlessly. Enigmatic teleportation magic surrounded Luciella gracefully while unfamiliar energy distorted close by surroundings unexpectedly brutally. Royal heir Luciella, Rogue, Kalfa, and Michaela cautiously observed Luciella advancing their location peacefully together carefully. Void abruptly emerged before everyone, holding confident expressions while confronting Luciella's questionable teleportation methods. Kalfa questioned Void sternly as Imperial representatives talked about unauthorized magical circles within territories seriously. Princess Luciella apologized respectfully towards Void as Kalfa furiously rejected unreasonable political accusations. Luciella explained Balra Empire requested assistance since hazardous creatures previously assaulted battlefield positions. Rogue introduced comrades with pride while Michaela excitedly understood Void previously fought alongside fabled heroes together. Kalfa demanded explanations forcefully while Void casually talked about magician Jalat Farlu's questionable actions. Remembered the official apologized sincerely, admitting independent actions caused unnecessary trouble encircling Rogue's comrades. Kalfa refused Void's authority firmly, insisting imperial jurisdiction directed every investigation including outsiders. Luciella questioned Void cautiously as Void expected additional matters required conversation between influential representatives. Rogue got astonishing recommendations growing an SSS-ranked adventurer through International Guild Federation approval. Kalfa responded loudly alongside stunned Michaela, struggling understanding Rogue's sudden promotion announcement fully immediately. Void proposed Rogue becoming Dragon Slayer, while Luciella questioned swift decisions including hazardous dragon subjugations. Void revealed perilous rumors describing revived Demon King troops assembling fiends. Kalfa clarified Northwestern fiends possessed overpowering strength, preventing nations from confronting their expanding military troops. Void requested Rogue complete hard SSS-ranked certification examinations before humanity confronted another destructive demonic conflict. Rogue accepted, thinking effective achievements could support comrades in spite of complicated responsibilities involving Inez. Void left peacefully following promising examination documents, wishing Rogue success before triggering teleportation magic circles. Teleportation magic suddenly triggered brutally, startling Rogue while companions observed hazardous magical disturbances. Luciella calmed Kalfa down, while Kalfa cautioned Rogue of Void, explaining Void's state extremely perilous. Void Merker's brutal history during humanity's Fiend War frightened Rogue's comrades significantly alongside battlefield debris. Luciella examined mysterious cards nervously while Kalfa dreaded consequences, including Pierrot and perilous fiends. Michaela courteously approached Princess Luciella, requesting private discussions regarding unfolding clashes affecting comrades. Michaela excitedly asked for stories about overseas cultures while Luciella greeted conversations enthusiastically. Kalfa realized Michaela's presence assisted Luciella relax comfortably while Rogue backed. Rogue entrusted Michaela cautiously before returning towards comrades waiting elsewhere throughout nearby city districts. He discovered adventurers handling urgent monster elimination requests following perilous creatures suddenly emerged. Rogue declined entering missions immediately, believing Gran and companions already handled hazardous situations effectively nearby. Rogue traveled alone towards remote wetlands while moonglow illuminated deserted paths. Inez and Nidhogg greeted Rogue after his return alongside gathered undead troops awaiting orders. Rogue clarified Michaela stayed accompanying Royal Heir Luciella while discussing complicated political relationships. Inez uneasily apologized prior to requesting complete military strength details regarding Rogue's growing undead force. Rogue's huge undead troops contained thousands of skeletons, zombies, Nidhogg and Inez positioned. Nidhogg reported mighty magical energy advancing northern territories while Rogue heard. Rogue recalled Void's warnings, suspecting northern monsters assembled forces before launching hazardous incursions. Inez congratulated Rogue eagerly following listening to recommendations regarding difficult SSS-ranked adventurer certification examinations. Rogue discussed northern monster appearances as Inez fretted concealed problems endangered surrounding countries. Inez advised Rogue avoiding imperial conflicts completely, thinking perilous political complications would worsen. Nidhogg encouraged Rogue supporting Kalfa's homeland while undead forces assembled under moonlit wilderness. Rogue awkwardly admitted northern creatures assembled partly since Inez's overwhelming magical presence attracted hazardous creatures. Inez realizing trustworthy friendships existed in spite of violent hardships across imperial territories previously. Rogue finally realized comrades defended others selflessly, risking themselves without hesitation throughout perilous hardships. He proclaimed passionately his determination defending precious friends versus approaching enemies endangering everyone. Rogue considered supporting Kalfa's homeland as Nidhogg willingly promised absolute loyalty alongside silent undead troops. Inez furiously rejected entering hazardous conflicts, declaring personal refusal despite Rogue's determined efforts protecting companions everywhere from foes. Rogue approached wordlessly while Inez refused the request, forming confusion. Rogue questioned Inez cautiously while Nidhogg observed uneasily, stunned completely by her unforeseen refusal. He realized obstinate Inez behaved differently recently, abandoning compliant behavior without explaining private motivations. Inez acknowledged discomfort within overseas territory, avoiding detailed explanations while Rogue heard anxiously near. She proclaimed steadfast loyalty toward Rogue, revealing sacrifices backing his deepest aspirations and desires. Inez furiously rejected her homeland, declaring steadfast devotion toward Rogue over everyone else. She confessed happiness backing Rogue's friendships as Rogue questioned her sudden heartfelt determination. Inez hesitated briefly while Nidhogg observed quietly, sensing unresolved emotions concealed under determined expressions. Nidhogg mocked Inez playfully alongside puzzled Rogue, exposing embarrassing worries regarding abandonment and isolation. Inez became speechless instantly after Nidhogg disclosed insecurities encircling Rogue, discovering companionship beyond devoted servants. Moonlight illuminated silent surroundings as Inez remained before Nidhogg, distancing herself. Inez hugged trembling knees silently as Nidhogg observed cautiously, recognizing overwhelming loneliness consuming her. She agreed Rogue's expanding friendships emotionally, believing their connection would survive every coming hardship. Grinned in tears, Inez trusting Rogue's continued existence would preserve bonds connecting everyone as one. Rogue apologized gently toward embarrassed Inez, comforting her cautiously while Nidhogg watched near wordlessly. Rogue acknowledging selfish behavior while surrounding troops watched silently close by. He disclosed painful experiences hiding Necromancer identity, explaining lifelong rejection from afraid encircling communities. Rogue commended Inez, recalling military growth and crucial discoveries attained through her contributions together. Inez admitted reviving Nidhogg covertly because Rogue continuously handled overpowering burdens lacking proper assistance alone. Nidhogg complained uneasily while Inez refused assistance immediately, embarrassing Rogue before close-by companions. Later, Rogue, Inez, and Nidhogg chuckled as one peacefully, eventually resolving harsh misunderstandings. Rogue reflected profoundly upon denying Necromancer identity, realizing comrades always backed his difficult. He enthusiastically proposed adventuring as one again, as Inez and Nidhogg agreed his renewed determination. Rogue expressed regret before gathered allies, regretting selfish dreams affecting devoted followers emotionally across hardships. Inez gratefully held Rogue's hand, celebrating fulfilled desires beside undead comrades, sharing renewed peaceful existence as one. Inez in tears asked for remembrance from Rogue, promising steadfast happiness. Rogue embraced crying Inez softly while Nidhogg watched wordlessly, understanding everyone's isolation. A figure abruptly called Rogue Master, shocking him completely as companions observed close by. Michaela accidentally witnessed emotional reconciliation, crying publicly after hearing everyone's sincere emotions and hardships together. Rogue introduced harmless undead companions brightly, reassuring frightened Michaela alongside laughing assembled troops. Michaela respected Rogue's undead comrades excitedly, praising impressive armor as calling everyone amazing. Rogue and Inez chuckled next to Nidhogg gladly, appreciating Michaela's fearless curiosity. Rogue declared determination firmly, promising comrades advancement together, while refusing hesitation regarding hazardous coming aspirations. He vowed saving persecuted nations proudly, encouraging Inez as promising approval toward misunderstood individuals everywhere together. Inez agreed Rogue's conviction composedly, thinking their shared journey marked meaningful beginnings for everyone ahead. Rogue with pride introduced undead comrades, determined toward changing globally opinions regarding necromancers. Close-by civilians raised weapons, supporting Rogue's declaration as cheering loudly beneath moonlit surroundings together. Rogue's exhausted comrades went into Saldia Empire's capital city, readying maintenance while sunrise approached. He discovered collapsed civilians encircling crowded streets, instantly realizing hazardous trouble affected Ascalon. Kalfa urgently organized emergency treatment efforts while requesting assistance from stunned close-by adventurers instantly. Michaela guided wounded civilians urgently towards treatment facilities, as overwhelmed healers continued working tirelessly. Rogue discovered injured Gran and Lagordo, immediately rushing anxiously towards both drained fighters. Gran explained destructive fights briefly, while Rogue listened cautiously. Relieved remaining companions regained consciousness. Kalfa revealed strange D-rank creatures used magic, creating severe injuries within overwhelmed healer guild members. Rogue learned enemy assaults wiped out 12 rescue teams, endangering collapse throughout entire defensive operations. Kalfa disclosed Luciella's secret coronation ceremony abruptly grew targeted, alarming Rogue. Suddenly, royal heir Luciella blamed herself tearfully, thinking unforeseen disaster occurred because private requests. Kalfa comforted Luciella gently, while Rogue understood dubious coordinated assaults appeared lacking warning everywhere. Kalfa suspected teleportation magic, while shocked companions questioned unbelievable transportation ways, including numerous creatures. Inez clarified teleportation theory calmly, insisting normal people lacked capabilities, performing progressed magical transportation. A teleportation magic needed gigantic magical control, creating transportation methods extremely difficult for people. Kalfa understood enemies exploited teleportation strategically, allowing overwhelming ambushes versus unsuspecting Ascalon adventurers continually near. Rogue connected mysterious attacks instantly. Choosing aerial investigation provided quickest opportunities discovering hidden enemies' locations. Inez carried Rogue through skies carefully, as he apologized uneasily throughout swift nighttime flight together. Rogue suspected Void Merker orchestrated assaults covertly, while Inez supported aerial reconnaissance tasks nearby wordlessly. Rogue discovered anti-teleportation geometry unexpectedly, realizing foe magicians escaped shortly before his aerial investigation reached wordlessly. Inez witnessed massive magical circles encircling Saldia Empire, confirming catastrophic danger endangered innumerable civilians simultaneously nearby from afar. Rogue discovered gigantic teleportation rings while investigating vanished adventurers beside flying. Nidhogg observed questionable emblems as Rogue recognized anti-teleportation geometry disrupting magical transportation networks. Inez connected mysterious circles with earlier creature incursions encircling Ascalon's devastated territories and disappearances. Rogue explained innumerable magicians collectively powered enormous rings, astonishing Inez through horrifying strategic possibilities. He concluded Balra Empire orchestrated devastating missions targeting Saldia Empire employing massive teleportation rings. Rogue predicted imminent conflict, explaining teleportation circles weakened quickly following enormous Empire casualties everywhere. Inez questioned Rogue's intentions quietly while flying alongside crumbling magical pathways across remote battlefields. Rogue remembered cherished companions suffering injuries, realizing heartfelt restraint grew impossible throughout escalating clashes. Kalfa watched injured adventurers recovering slowly, while drained survivors rested throughout crowded medical chambers. Rogue commanded Inez and Nidhogg aggressively, readying decisive retaliation versus enemies endangering Imperial stability. Inez accepted Rogue's command immediately, soaring throughout distant landscapes as readying coming. Gran and Ligurdo recovered peacefully within crowded headquarters as wounded adventurers rested. Kalfa greeted Rogue's returning group kindly. Relieved strain encircling Ascalon's unstable circumstances gradually weakened. She explained cathedral healers supported overwhelmed clinics as Rogue talked about questionable activity appearing overhead lately. Rogue cautioned Kalfa another invasion approached soon, connecting Balra Empire movements with perilous escalating clashes. Kalfa clarified Balra Empire lacked resources, motivating territorial incursions against neighboring countries encircling imperial borders. Kalfa identified Prime Minister Void Merker, describing perilous aspirations concealed behind calculated state. She remembered Void Merker's ruthless wartime philosophy, exposing obsession toward strength as sacrificing innocent hostages. Rogue considered Void selfishly manipulated magical technology, prioritizing private dominance over imperial civilians. Rogue dreaded inevitable international conflicts emerging because Void controlled overpowering empire influence and military. Rogue resolved stopping Void Merker personally, recognizing immediate intervention stayed necessary stopping catastrophic empire destruction. Kalfa proclaimed protecting Luciella Sardia and innocent civilians remained her highest steadfast responsibility throughout clashes. Rogue admired Kalfa's devotion, realizing Luciella genuinely inspired hope within struggling Empire civilians. Kalfa disclosed Luciella endured isolation childhood hardships, yet continued transforming nations through compassionate direction. She thought Luciella ultimately would restore prosperity, motivating everyone supporting Saldia Empire's uncertain coming. Kalfa strengthened her determination, promising continued resistance in spite of overpowering threats around Saldia Empire persistently. Rogue clarified 5 teleportation circles surrounded Saldia Empire, enabling swift foe military deployments. Kalfa fretted protecting enormous territories remained impossible because Void Merker's unpredictable actions complicated preparations. Gran and Ligurdo volunteered, offering additional manpower supporting Kalfa's struggling defensive missions versus incursions. Ligurdo declared defending innocent civilians mattered, refusing passive silence during escalating imperial emergencies. Gran encouraged exhausted adventurers, thinking combined magical strength could repel advancing Empire enemies. Kalfa accepted adventurers' assistance gratefully as citizens expressed regret sincerely regarding Ascalon's weakened present conditions. Kalfa regretted previous operations failed, thinking experienced adventurers might have lowered destructive casualties significantly. Ligurdo and Gran pledged steadfast cooperation immediately, supporting Kalfa's preparations versus advancing military threats together. Kalfa instructed Callum gathering Imperial soldiers rapidly while adventurers anticipated decisive fights advancing Saldia Empire soon. Rogue revealed Void suggested attending hazardous SS-level promotion examinations scheduled during imminent assaults. Ligurdo and Gran instantly believed concealed traps, questioning Rogue's reckless participation during wartime preparations. Inez clarified Balra Empire intended distracting Rogue deliberately, preventing interference versus teleportation circle missions. Kalfa assuredly stated Rogue possessed sufficient strength, destroying Balra Empire's enormous magical transportation rings. She outlined foe plans cautiously, explaining Rogue must attend examinations following Balra Empire's expectations. Kalfa organized coordinated strategies, planning Void's capture while Rogue destroyed hazardous teleportation rings entirely. Rogue apologized anxiously while companions prepared difficult defensive missions, delaying overpowering Imperial enemy troops. Michaela completed treatments successfully, restoring wounded adventurers' magical stability prior to advancing hazardous confrontations. Rogue commended Michaela, requesting continued medical aid protecting wounded civilians throughout upcoming clashes. Kalfa fretted excessive responsibilities burdened Rogue heavily, while companions pledged supporting Michaela throughout hazardous operations. Rogue accepted overwhelming responsibilities composedly as comrades trusted his strength protecting Saldia Empire. He awkwardly admitted valuing everyone's bond profoundly, strengthening determination protecting companions throughout clashes ahead. Kalfa and others embraced Rogue gladly, astonishing him through sincere acceptance and heartfelt encouragement. Rogue anxiously understood companions supported him genuinely, despite misunderstandings surrounding his heartfelt confession entirely. Appreciated everyone quietly, Rogue appreciating trusted comrades supporting him throughout dangerous Empire hardships faithfully. Rogue distributed Immortal Force summoning circles, preparing companions cautiously before confronting hazardous Empire enemies together. Kalfa praised Rogue, celebrating coming victories and Saldia Empire's fabled initial SS-level adventurer. Rogue grinned, anticipating successful reunions following hazardous fights endangering Saldia Empire's stability. Elsewhere, Void Merkur investigated Rogue covertly, confirming suspicions regarding teleportation rings through concealed magical surveillance. Void ridiculed Kalfa's optimistic strategies assuredly, revealing horrifying dark magic controlling living beings freely. Called forth dragons assuredly, Void preparing devastating gifts intended overpowering Saldia Empire and Rogue Kusel entirely. He rejected powerful heroes completely, thinking ruthless control alone should guide weaker civilians permanently forward. Void initiated gigantic sacrificial magic circles, accepting casualties while beginning battles, protecting cherished companions all around frantically. Kalfa explained military deployments, while Luciella listened wordlessly, understanding Western settlements confronted danger around Gaja region's crucial capital gates already. She described Imperial reinforcements protecting southern territories, but Kalfa worried constantly because Void's goal remained entirely unidentified everywhere throughout nations. Luciella examined her device hopelessly, while admitting national safety disappeared quickly, compelling nobles toward desperate defensive preparations instantly versus threats. She accepted responsibility for exposing Imperial citizens towards bloodshed, believing personal sacrifice remained necessary defending terrified civilians everywhere from destruction. Kalfa comforted weakened Luciella beside her bed, recognizing the elf royal heir remained central backing their shaky country throughout crisis periods. Luciella gently entrusted Kalfa with future responsibilities, causing Kalfa's worried expression revealing fear towards losing the drained princess throughout clash. Kalfa wept frantically before Luciella, refusing hopeless remarks while asking whether the royal heir still wanted anything meaningful anymore within life. Luciella quietly revealed wishes about visiting her deceased mother's homeland, astonishing Kalfa as exposing concealed isolation carried constantly through years. She described age-old elven lands beyond Balra Empire, encouraging travel plans despite hazardous circumstances endangering surrounding territories everywhere with chaos. Kalfa promised accompanying Luciella toward her mother's hometown, encouraging Imperial restorative as strengthening Luciella's fading determination through heartfelt support together. Luciella stared toward enigmatic visions appearing through her device, questioning whether fate demanded defending peace instead pursuing uncertain aspirations. Kalfa and Luciella smiled sincerely together, strengthening mutual trust while promising surviving Imperial turmoil alongside each other, despite overpowering conditions. Imperial soldiers interrupted their conversation suddenly, reporting enormous magical disturbances advancing the capital and creating immediate concern throughout regal headquarters. Luciella identified Dallin region as foe target, explaining brave adventurers stayed stationed there while Kalfa listened cautiously alongside strategic battlefield maps. Dreadfire commanded local defenses confidently beside armed adventurers, preparing forces rapidly before devastating assaults could overwhelm defenseless settlements completely near. Sinan and Ligurdo grumbled uneasily about receiving perilous responsibilities in spite of failing promotion examinations and lacking confidence regarding upcoming assignments. Sinan explained Dalian region protected Gaja's capital indirectly, making adventurer endurance essential, maintaining military power throughout imperial territories entirely. Ligurdo joked carelessly beside Sinan, compelling embarrassed responses while reminding him massive pressure rested upon their difficult empire mission ahead. Numerous creatures suddenly appeared before Imperial soldiers, leaving Sinan shocked while Ligurdo chuckled uneasily about their terrible battlefield circumstances encircling them. Nearby adventurers mocked frightened Imperial soldiers openly, claiming veteran fighters naturally handled creatures regularly, unlike nervous military recruits throughout perilous encounters. Imperial soldiers discovered enormous goblin forces surrounding battlefields, growing alarmed after witnessing gigantic creatures leading innumerable smaller goblins near together. Sinan clarified the creature represented a goblin lord, legendary creatures commanding entire nations of brutal goblins through overpowering authority everywhere. Experienced soldiers clarified goblin kings ranked beyond goblin lords, terrifying inexperienced recruits listening anxiously alongside battlefield preparations versus advancing enemies. Sinan abandoned useless complaints immediately while goblin armies advanced aggressively, forcing Empire troops toward direct confrontation, lacking opportunities, avoiding hazardous fighting. Empire commanders challenged nervous troops courageously, requiring they prove themselves worthy before Kalfa and Master Logue throughout desperate battles ahead. Sinan encouraged Ligurdo confidently before battle, deciding trusting companions completely stayed better than surrendering towards terror and uncertainty encircling missions. Ligurdo regained determination loudly, believing Rogue could survive hazardous situations while soldiers near listened cautiously towards hopeful encouragement from companions. Imperial soldiers charged aggressively against goblin forces together, proving humanity still possessed strength resisting overpowering creatures invading defenseless territories near. Rogue observed distant mountain ranges carefully, sensing multiple magical reactions gathering quickly while preparing himself toward approaching perilous confrontations ahead instantly. He connected strange enemy movements toward stories encircling the resurrected progenitor Fiend King, realizing larger disasters endangered entire regions beyond expectations. Rogue apologized toward Inez for exposing dangerous details unintentionally, while stories regarding uncontrolled magical incidents spread quickly everywhere already. Nidhogg analyzed enemy troops carefully, identifying powerful monsters containing Cerberus, trolls, poison dragons, and undead creatures assembling near together dangerously. Inez became furious following learning foes impersonated Lucifer and targeted Rogue directly, demanding ruthless punishment, lacking hesitation versus those responsible. Nidhogg rejected mercy completely, declaring absolute loyalty towards his lord, while endangering slaughter against anyone supporting fake rulers and deception. Rogue realized monstrous invasions endangered Saldia Empire strategically, understanding someone mighty required stopping disasters before complete destruction overwhelmed. Rogue gathered Inez and Nidhogg confidently, ordering immediate action while preparing themselves cautiously against advancing creatures endangering regions. Inez triggered powerful Necromancer abilities proudly, unleashing devastating magical flames while Nidhogg experienced overpowering strength surging throughout his transformed body. Nidhogg charged skyward brutally, as proclaiming Lucifer's true strength, leaving battlefield responsibilities toward Rogue and Inez during sudden aerial assaults. Inez observed Nidhogg's uncontrollable flames spread wildly across battlefields, recognizing his aggressive fighting style remained perilous yet overwhelmingly effective all around. She observed terrified creatures escaping mountain ranges desperately, realizing their combined magical pressure overwhelmed foe troops before direct confrontation even began. Inez confronted enemy leaders fearlessly, mocking their bravery while recognizing fiends connected toward enemies overcame years earlier by powerful troops. Surrounded by enormous Cerberus monsters, Inez remained completely calm while observing foe actions carefully throughout hazardous mountain battlefields. Inez questioned why devoted Cerberus monsters obeyed false rulers, suspecting manipulation controlled their hazardous actions, versus encircling territories everywhere. Inez assaulted aggressively while declaring enemies misunderstood Lucifer entirely, overwhelming enormous Cerberus creatures through superior magical pressure and confidence alone. Inez commanded massive monsters arrogantly before battle, forcing frightened Cerberus creatures towards submission beneath her overpowering demonic control and presence. Inez floated calmly above obedient Cerberus monsters, maintaining complete control while foe creatures surrounded woodlands and mountainous battlefields near wordlessly. She praised obedient monsters gently while noticing troublesome enemies approaching quickly from remote mountain regions towards hazardous confrontation areas unexpectedly nearby. Terrified survivors recognized Inez immediately, recalling monstrous massacres committed previously as panicking over her sudden appearance alongside approaching creatures everywhere. Frightened enemies attempted escaping desperately, ordering creatures delaying Inez temporarily as fearing certain death advancing relentlessly behind them throughout battlefields. Inez confronted terrified survivors confidently, calmly questioned if he was the Lucifer while destroying surviving doubts surrounding her overpowering demonic identity, fully forever. Inez confronted monstrous enemies directly, criticizing attempts using Lucifer's feared name carelessly as pursuing deceptive schemes controlling terrified individuals. The Fiend Warrior identified Inez, remembering previous encounters while anxiously realizing hazardous conflicts surrounded mysterious organizations and powerful individuals. Survivors outlined Inez defeating monstrous gangs easily, explaining only worthy beings deserved holding Lucifer's legendary title within frightened witnesses. Fiends panicked further following learning 7 sages appeared abruptly, believing disastrous battles would spread uncontrollably throughout numerous territories across continents. Inez declared Lucifer should symbolize coexistence between humans and demons, instead encouraging hatred, bloodshed, fear, and unceasing conflict between societies. Inez questioned silently why Lucifer's feared name continued spreading everywhere, growing associated with hazardous conflicts and questionable organizations recently globally. She sensed terrifying pressure approaching from distant mountains, creating nearby demons growing terrified despite observing movements cautiously from elevated skies. The Fiend Warrior resolved retreating temporarily remained safer, admitting confronting Inez alone would certainly end disastrously versus overpowering strength immediately. Inez stopped the escaping demon, demanding explanations regarding prohibited schemes deceiving civilians through Lucifer's notorious renown throughout encircling territories. She warned perilous individuals often become uncontrollable rapidly, comparing reckless troublemakers towards spreading fires destroying everything around them, ultimately beyond containment. Furious demons assaulted Inez simultaneously, ordering savage retaliation while surrounding enemies attempted overpowering her through coordinated brutal magical assaults. Inez activated devastating destruction magic, creating enormous black hole assaults capable crushing foes instantly through frightening supernatural power. The surviving demon identified prohibited Fiend King magic, becoming puzzled why Inez possessed abilities reserved exclusively for legendary rulers alone. Inez ridiculed the demon's slow understanding, maintaining complete confidence as observing terrified responses caused through overpowering magical superiority displayed. She introduced herself officially as Lucifer, devoted servant toward Necromancer rogue Quisel, revealing her true identity proudly before scared fiends. Agurata doubted Inez completely, refusing believing Lucifer's servant would attack demon kings while encircling fiends observed anxiously. Agurata triggered powerful phoenix enchantment magic immediately, covering himself with blazing flames while readying direct fighting versus Inez aggressively. Inez recognized Agurata's phoenix bloodline composedly, exposing his true identity as observing reckless confidence displayed before perilous confrontation began completely. Agurata declared ambitions conquering Saldia Empire proudly, intending becoming the next Fiend King through overpowering strength and devastating warfare ultimately. Inez responded gracefully, using devastating magic called Fallen Arrow Lucifer, formally greeting Fiend King Agurata before launching destructive attacks. Inez defeated Agurata effortlessly before bidding farewell quietly, leaving the wounded Fiend King entirely overwhelmed by her frightening supernatural abilities. Inez condemned Agurata's invasion plans sternly, declaring Rogue's peaceful homeland deserved protection from devastating ambitions endangering innocent civilians. Inez decided searching surrounding mountains remained necessary first, believing hidden foes still operated covertly throughout perilous territories near Rogue. Rogue explored nearby forests carefully, discovering suspicious monster activity while remaining alert towards strange actions concealed among wilderness encircling him. Rogue encountered 3 enormous trolls abruptly, preparing himself immediately as analyzing hazardous opponents obstructing his path through mountainous terrain ahead. Rogue examined enormous trolls excitedly, thinking mighty monsters would strengthen his expanding immortal force greatly through necromancy and resurrection abilities. Massive trolls assaulted Rogue brutally, smashing encircling ground continually while attempting crushing the young necromancer through overwhelming physical strength. Rogue prepared necromancy spells calmly, mentioning prolonged usage involving human corpses instead of controlling actual monsters lately throughout earlier fights. He activated Necromancer's resurrection successfully, summoning numerous skeletal warriors quickly while surrounding undead troops appeared from scattered debris. Used Necromancer's pledge cautiously, rogue warning resurrected trolls versus reckless fighting since weakened durability affected their restored undead bodies permanently. Rogue encouraged Imperial soldiers confidently while massive goblin creatures assaulted brutally, ordering everyone unleash magical power without hesitation. Sudden skeletal warriors crashed throughout battlefields unexpectedly, colliding directly against giant goblins while defending terrified Empire troops from destruction. Explosive impacts scattered bones and debris everywhere, compelling encircling troops retreat briefly while undead fighters continued resisting goblin assaults fiercely. Gigantic goblins charged recklessly through crumbling terrain repeatedly, creating destruction continuously as concealed observers analyzed their aggressive movements from safety. The enraged goblin commander roared furiously across battlefields, gathering nearby monsters together before launching another destructive assault versus humanity troops. Glowing lights surrounded charging goblin armies suddenly, confusing gigantic commanders while concealed undead troops readied coordinated counterattacks over battlefields fiercely. Undead warriors pierced the giant goblin repeatedly before Rogue appreciated his summoned soldiers quietly for defending weary Imperial troops. Rogue offered the merciless goblin commander another opportunity, joining his expanding undead force rather than continuing meaningless ruin against humanity. Rogue activated prohibited necromancy immediately, unleashing resurrection magic directly upon the enormous goblin while near soldiers observed speechlessly together. The resurrected goblin creature awakened under Rogue's control completely, shocking encircling soldiers while undead troops accepted their new comrade. Rogue accepted the resurrected goblin obediently while preparing additional undead summons, thinking stronger troops remained necessary, remaining prolonged conflict ahead. He preserved enormous goblin bodies carefully, intending coming back home safely since Shin waited anxiously within the Empire for him. Rogue grinned confidently while planning bringing souvenirs home later, revealing calm determination despite continuous battles encircling hazardous territories nearby constantly. Ligurdo screamed desperately following enemies attacked abruptly, losing composure completely while violent battlefield chaos intensified around exhausted Empire troops. Multiple goblins unleashed destructive impact magic together, creating enormous explosions while Empire fighters scattered urgently throughout devastated battlegrounds, seeking immediate endurance. Imperial soldiers defeated smaller goblins effectively, leaving only the perilous goblin lords standing before drained fighters throughout ruined battlefields. Sinan encouraged injured Ligurdo calmly, while both troops regained confidence despite remaining frightening assaults moments earlier during chaotic fighting. The Goblin Lord unleashed powerful manifestation magic suddenly, shocking nearby soldiers as gigantic weapons materialized throughout encircling battlefields. Ligurdo laughed nervously alongside Sinan, realizing their unbelievable endurance depended entirely upon fortunate circumstances, rather than actual superior strength versus foes. Ligurdo noticed the Goblin Lord carried strange weapons strangely, creating Sinan realizing hazardous connections existed behind enigmatic battlefield events unfolding. Sinan noticed the Goblin Lord wielded ordinary timber weapons strangely, realizing hidden weaknesses possibly existed behind frightening magical skills during fighting encounters. Ligurdo activated Flame Sword enchantment immediately, shocking nearby soldiers while preparing decisive assaults versus the approaching Goblin Lord alone over ruined battlefields. Sinan watched Ligurdo attack enchanted slimes, while shocked companions realized normal weapons abruptly carried devastating magical reinforcement during fighting scenes. Ligurdo proudly clarified Rogue previously subdued slimes using enchantment magic, convincing Ligurdo studying techniques could strengthen coming battlefield endurance greatly. Ligurdo respected Rogue's impressive abilities while celebrating experimental enchantment success, although Rogue quietly asked his companion's reckless enthusiasm alongside him. Sinan charged aggressively toward another slime, testing enchanted ammunition against enemies while Rogue nervously monitored perilous fighting movements near cautiously. Ligurdo successfully sliced magical projectiles apart, employing enchantment strength, leaving Sinan astonished as allies celebrated their unexpected achievement with excitement. Ligurdo examined Sinan's timber blade cautiously, recognizing identical markings belonging previously to Arsenal's missing adventurer team from Delaware Valley. He explained Balra Empire soldiers probably trained adventurers using creature weapons, creating Sinan questioning their cruel military experimentation ways continually. Sinan revealed Arsenal's leaders strengthened wooden blades, employing wind magic as cautiously engraving magical flow patterns directly over weapon surfaces. Sinan immediately realized flame enchantment worked similarly, realizing normal swords stayed useless unless users mastered magical reinforcement techniques properly beforehand. Ligurdo activated enhanced movements against attacking monsters abruptly, astonishing Sinan while enemies failed reacting rapidly against overpowering enchanted blade strikes. Ligurdo charged recklessly toward monstrous enemies, swinging enchanted weapons repeatedly, while mighty impacts scattered debris throughout encircling battlefield areas brutally. Sinan rushed beside wounded Ligurdo immediately, protecting him while creatures continued assaulting aggressively through heavy dust clouds and explosions near. He realized enemy defenses remained extremely durable, compelling both adventurers struggling continuously while perilous creatures pressured their drained positions lacking mercy. Rogue apologized calmly before requesting Sinan distract enemies, readying concentrated magical strength, while Sinan confidently agreed hazardous battlefield responsibilities. Sinan unleashed rapid spear attacks against approaching creatures, creating enough opening time as Rogue completed overpowering magical preparations. Sinan smirked confidently while observing creatures resisting ordinary assaults, confirming physical strength alone remained ineffective against enchanted foe bodies. Large goblins abruptly captured Sinan tightly, dragging him forcefully while surrounding creatures celebrated their short-term battlefield advantage loudly near. Sinan struggled desperately inside monstrous grips while goblins laughed harshly, enjoying his helpless condition throughout chaotic fighting versus advancing foes. Ligurdo immediately rescued Sinan from hazardous creatures, interrupting enemy movements while Sinan gratefully recognized his companion's timely battlefield intervention courageously. Sinan triggered powerful fire attribute enchantment, strengthening his weapon dramatically while preparing another destructive counterattack versus approaching goblin enemies. Sinan unleashed Crimson Flare against enormous goblins, surrounding enchanted blades with devastating flames while charging aggressively towards enemies near fiercely. Ligurdo observed Sinan's blazing attack carefully, realizing overwhelming enchantment power exceeded ordinary combat techniques used previously throughout perilous fights entirely. Explosive flames erupted throughout battlefield surroundings suddenly, forcing goblins and near soldiers retreating fearfully from Sinan's destructive magical assault instantly. Sinan endured painful magical strain quietly while enchanted weapons continued accelerating rapidly, overpowering enemies through relentless fiery assaults lacking hesitation completely. Remaining soldiers reported Dreadfire overcame powerful goblin troops successfully, spreading shocking battlefield achievements throughout regional military leadership headquarters rapidly. Kalfa informed Princess Luciella ongoing battles centered around Regulus Heart, while troops attempted destroying hazardous teleportation magic rings throughout regions. Luciella happily celebrated temporary safety with Kalfa, asking hopefully whether around battlefields eventually stabilized against continuing creature incursions threatening civilians. Kalfa clarified many victories occurred close teleportation circles, although wounded troops prevented neighboring regions receiving immediate military support assistance. Luciella wished monster attacks truly ended permanently, yet doubted peaceful circumstances stayed believable considering earlier destructive battlefield disasters experienced. Kalfa abruptly sensed troubling developments approaching rapidly before nervous soldiers entered urgently, announcing another important battlefield report within Regal headquarters. Kalfa and Luciella shocked as information about mysterious magical reactions appeared close teleportation circles, suggesting hazardous new threats emerging simultaneously over multiple regions. Ligurdo commended Sinan enthusiastically after defeating goblin foes together, although Sinan responded awkwardly toward exaggerated compliments from encircling adventurers. Regional soldiers thanked Rogue's Dreadfire group sincerely, admitting their combined strength exceeded expectations during difficult battles versus overpowering creature troops. Ligurdo and Sinan received recognition proudly, earning praise as genuine Imperial warriors defending civilians through hazardous combat tasks throughout battlefields. They celebrated victory cheerfully alongside comrades, discussing future gatherings while weary troops relaxed peacefully at the rear of crowded military camps. Void casually joined Ligurdo and Sinan during celebrations, confidently accepting invitations while surrounding adventurers responded anxiously towards his strange appearance. Sinan and Ligurdo faced unfamiliar Void carefully, questioning his identity aggressively following noticing strange clothing and questionable behavior. Void apologized politely for overhearing Kalfa's name unintentionally, introducing himself quietly while Ligurdo remained unsure regarding unfamiliar intentions nearby carefully. Void reassured Rogue and Sinan peacefully, promising harmless intentions while smiling assuredly despite both adventurers maintaining defensive stances towards him cautiously. Void departed silently beneath moonlight afterward, thanking Rogue respectively while enigmatic magical movements suggested hazardous concealed objectives stayed unresolved. Inez returned alongside Nidhogg proudly, reporting zombie dragons and powerful dragon breath attacks successfully eliminated encircling enemy troops entirely. Rogue listened excitedly, while Inez explained destroying Lucifer's troops entirely, leaving huge destruction throughout near battlefields through overwhelming magical assaults. Inez found intermediate magical rings stabilizing Balra Empire teleportation systems, letting magical energy transferring continuously between connected strategic locations safely. She confidently planned unleashing immortal armies through teleportation circles, preparing devastating magical invasions, employing overpowering supernatural military power against foes globally. Rogue encouraged embarrassed Inez kindly, despite her doubts regarding magical strength, reassuring her contributions stayed valuable throughout hazardous missions together. Inez respectfully thanked Rogue for praising her achievements as Nidhogg silently watched their conversation alongside nearby forest paths. Rogue discussed controlling captured trolls carefully, explaining massive military advantages while Inez calculated their fighting strength versus skeleton zombie forces. Questioned whether Inez truly felt satisfied currently, Rogue noticing her uncertain responses despite latest victories against hazardous enemy troops. Inez fretted continued battles would weaken military resources ultimately, although Rogue reminded her Nidhogg and Immortal forces remained powerful allies available. Rogue considered Inez's worries seriously before sudden movements interrupted discussions, suggesting hazardous developments advancing their concealed location unexpectedly. Rogue and Inez sensed dangerous changes approaching suddenly, while Nidhogg warned enigmatic foes moved significantly closer towards their concealed positions. Inez believed concealed enemy strategies already spreading throughout the Empire, realizing hazardous plans expanded beyond normal military confrontations. Terrifying chimera monsters appeared aggressively before stunned soldiers, forcing Rogue's party confronting horrifying creatures possessing overpowering, devastating appearances immediately. Sinan recognized monstrous chimeras nervously while frightened soldiers fought understanding dangerous creatures suddenly emerging throughout encircling battlefields lacking warning. Void revealed sinister ambitions quietly, declaring desires directing everything within the Empire as observing ongoing chaos spreading throughout entire territories. Rogue and Inez examined the chimera cautiously, while discussing prohibited dark magic responsible for forming perilous creatures through corrupted souls. Rogue clarified necromancy consumed human dignity, transforming souls into tools as prohibited magic permanently twisted living beings beyond recognition. Inez suspected Void Merker caused the chimera incident, while Rogue silently agreed somebody dangerous experimented carelessly with prohibited magical practices. Rogue noticed 6 chimera monsters approaching quickly through the forest, compelling both comrades into immediate preparation before sudden brutal confrontation began. Nidhogg confronted the approaching chimera confidently, while Rogue and Inez observed cautiously, realizing powerful foes surrounded the entire hazardous region. Inez clarified the chimera possessed immortality through merged lives, while Rogue composedly considered the frightening implications behind such life carefully. Then Inez approached assuredly alongside monstrous creatures, praising their compatibility while suggesting they belonged together with her organization entirely. Rogue stood beside Inez and Nidhogg surrounded by undead followers, preparing silently while enemies watched their strange expanding alliance carefully. The chimera gathered beside several beasts as aggressive voices demanded slaughter, pushing Rogue's party toward an unavoidable lethal confrontation immediately. Undead soldiers suddenly charged across the battlefield beneath approaching creatures, beginning fierce fighting while debris scattered brutally around everyone near. Gran and nearby soldiers panicked while the massive chimera abruptly emerged before them, forcing everyone into immediate confusion and terror. The chimera attacked aggressively toward frightened soldiers, causing grand shock as desperate warriors scattered rapidly throughout the perilous battlefield nearby. Several troops stared helplessly at the monstrous chimera, admitting nobody witnessed such frightening creatures prior to facing certain brutal death themselves. Void quietly disclosed he created the chimera through dark magic, shocking Ligurdo and Sinan while fight noises echoed throughout encircling areas. Void smiled proudly beside attacking undead soldiers, treating the deadly chimera affectionately as chaos continued spreading throughout terrified fighters. Void ridiculed Ligurdo confidently, as explaining additional sorcerers and Imperial soldiers already entered the battlefield, strengthening his overpowering military advantage. Ligurdo abruptly identified Void's strange appearance, realizing the mysterious enemy possibly belonged to the powerful Barla Empire leadership structure. Void formally introduced himself as Void Merker, prime official of Barla Empire and one respected figure within 7 sages globally. Sinan and Ligurdo reacted nervously toward Void's frightening standing, understanding their enemy possessed overpowering authority, intelligence, magical power, and influence. Void demanded cooperation with the Barla Empire, while destructive assaults continued nearby, compelling everyone into hazardous state and military conflict. Sinan and Ligurdo angrily refused Void's proposal, shouting fiercely while readying weapons and refusing cooperation with hazardous Imperial aspirations completely. Ligurdo cautioned Sinan the battle would continue repeatedly, while both fighters coordinated carefully before confronting overwhelming foes straight together. Void observed their resistance composedly, expressing disappointment while assuredly maintaining control over the battlefield through superior magical power and planning. Explosions scattered both fighters violently across the battlefield, compelling Ligurdo and Sinan into desperate movements as assaults continued unceasingly. Ligurdo launched Snakefang aggressively toward approaching enemies, counterattacking fiercely while mighty slashes tore throughout the battlefield around everyone. Void unleashed overpowering magic toward approaching fighters, forcing nearby fighters into defensive movements while devastating energy expanded quickly everywhere. Sinan believed their attack succeeded briefly, but sudden silence instantly formed confusion between both warriors throughout the perilous confrontation unfolding. Void reappeared completely unharmed prior to Sinan and Ligurdo, mocking their weakness while demonstrating the enormous difference between their magical skills. Void taunted both fighters mercilessly, calling their resistance pathetic while mighty light surrounded the battlefield and pressured everyone psychologically. Gran and another injured soldier realized the circumstance worsened severely, watching helplessly while Void maintained overwhelming control versus drained opponents surviving. Citizens feared complete destruction, while Rogue and nearby villagers realized the approaching Chimera endangered every building within town walls instantly. Gran ordered every soldier toward defensive positions while the enormous Chimera charged aggressively closer, creating panic throughout exhausted battlefield troops near. Soldiers blocked the massive Chimera frantically alongside city walls, understanding the creature would slaughter civilians if defenses entirely collapsed there. Sinan and Ligurdo rushed across the battlefield anxiously, realizing enemy assaults continued worsening while allies struggled protecting near civilians frantically. Void composedly discussed coming negotiations with the Saldia Empire as dismissing weak opponents, maintaining confidence throughout the chaotic battlefield encircling everyone. Ligurdo questioned Void furiously, unable understanding why a esteemed sage controlled hazardous monsters and endangered innocent civilians deliberately everywhere. Void revealed his cruel philosophy openly, believing powerful individuals deserved control, while weak individuals naturally disappeared, lacking receiving defense ever. Sinan and Ligurdo refused Void's beliefs furiously, facing him directly while accusing him of abusing innocent individuals selfishly through bloodshed. Void cautioned their mercenary allies would never arrive, revealing additional Chimera attacks already targeted remote reinforcements supporting near-defensive troops. He doubted Rogue's true identity suspiciously, thinking his strange strength and enigmatic abilities completely contradicted his supposedly ordinary background and standing. Rogue prepared secretly beside Inez while discussing concealed truths, believing Void would soon expose perilous information encircling enigmatic powers publicly. Rogue thanked Inez quietly prior to declaring he would never forgive arrogant nobles abusing control versus weaker innocent civilians everywhere again. Inez protected Rogue passionately against Void, insisting Rogue possessed sincere strength as condemning Void's selfish arrogance and cruelty completely publicly. Rogue gathered undead warriors confidently beside monstrous allies, readying final assaults while demonstrating leadership surpassing ordinary mercenaries and troops completely. Inez encouraged everyone fearlessly, declaring Rogue would certainly return victorious since his skills exceeded Void's corrupted followers and monsters considerably. Rogue advanced beside Inez, Nidhogg, and innumerable undead fighters, forming an immortal army determined towards defeating Void and protecting civilians from further destruction and suffering. War officially began between Saldia Empire and Barla Empire, while soldiers confronted Void straight over the chaotic battlefield under expanding tension. Rogue and his companions prepared traveling towards the SS level examination while investigating Barla Empire's military strength and hazardous growing influence. Several Chimera monsters assaulted Saldia Empire unceasingly, destroying entire regions while Barla Empire's legendary leader personally emerged before frightened defenders. Ligurdo struggled emotionally during battle, attempting delaying tactics while desperately realizing nobody truly realized the horrifying circumstance encircling Void. Void mocked enemy soldiers while praising Rogue's exceptional abilities, declaring ordinary fighters remained insignificant compared alongside Rogue's overpowering potential power. Void realized emotions influenced his judgment slightly, causing brief hesitation while observing foe reactions throughout the shaky battlefield cautiously. He discussed Rogue's unusual magic skills seriously, describing him as extremely disturbing in spite of already understanding earlier reports about hazardous magical incidents. Void compared Rogue's strength against powerful demon forces and chimera creatures, believing Rogue ultimately could surpass even his private abilities. Became irritated hearing enemies praise Rogue continually. Void choosing personally eliminating Rogue remained necessary despite ongoing battlefield complications encircling everyone. Sudden black flames spread violently throughout the battlefield, shocking soldiers completely, while confusion quickly consumed near fighters and defensive patterns. Black flames consumed nearby soldiers painfully, while frightened warriors fell helplessly across the battlefield throughout Void's overpowering magical assault. Void triggered Great Cursed Flame Apocalypse, dedicating victory towards Barla Empire, while accumulated explosion magic spread devastating black flames. Legrudo cautioned everyone avoiding black flames remained essential because normal magic failed entirely, while victims suffered burning souls and unbearable pain. Void explained the attack combined SS-level integration magic with prohibited dark magic, shocking near warriors observing the destructive battlefield destruction. He revealed Imperial magicians strengthened his technique, allowing borrowed magical power supporting enormous battlefield destruction versus exhausted enemy troops surviving. Void threatened warriors mercilessly while massive magical attacks approached rapidly, forcing soldiers towards certain destruction versus overpowering foe strength. Void proudly displayed his magical superiority, demanding frightened enemies acknowledge his immense strength as battlefield destruction continued spreading brutally. Rogue found Imperial magic remained remotely connected, realizing foe magicians continuously supported Void through large-scale coordinated magical techniques at the rear of fight. Rogue, Inez, and Nidhogg reunited effectively alongside the battlefield, celebrating completed preparations while allies acknowledged Rogue's crucial strategic assistance. Officially passed the promotion examination, Rogue returning proudly as an SSS-level adventurer, while comrades celebrated his incredible achievement together joyfully. Legordo shouted happily toward Rogue's arrival, while Void wordlessly watched nearby, carefully watching the battlefield circumstance change suddenly. Rogue politely greeted Void calmly, while both exchanged respectful words, forming temporary tension between allies and enemies throughout hazardous ongoing clash. He noticed Void appeared physically exhausted and unusually pale, silently realizing continuous large-scale magic likely affected Void's state severely throughout fight. Void resolved preventing further irregular events remained necessary, readying additional magical actions while maintaining complete confidence before surrounding frightened fighters. Activated an enormous teleportation magic circle, Void commanding Barla Empire forces aggressively while readying coordinated assaults versus weakened Saldia Empire defenders immediately. Void warned everybody opposing Barla Empire would eventually die, while nearby fighters heard carefully throughout the perilous battlefield confrontation unfolding. Void suddenly spotted unforeseen problems developing, realizing additional military reinforcements supporting Barla Empire strangely failed arriving during fighting missions. Void became confused watching strange battlefield movements, questioning enigmatic changes while chimera creatures and soldiers surrounded the entire hazardous area. Barla Empire soldiers mocked weaker enemies, requiring immediate surrender toward Void, as assaulting opponents unable using progressed floating magic techniques. Undead creatures launched aggressive assaults against Imperial soldiers abruptly, forming confusion while battlefield control shifted unpredictably between opposing troops. Several hooded soldiers suddenly noticed flying skeleton bodies approaching rapidly, creating confusion while frightened fighters scattered over battlefield areas. Undead soldiers and massive chimera creatures assaulted aggressively together, overwhelming defenders while brutal clashes erupted throughout encircling battlefield zones. Void mocked Rogue and Inez calmly, insulting Void while maintaining complete confidence throughout the chaotic fight encircling everyone near. Inez stood beside Rogue protectively, revealing foe teleportation rings already belonged completely to her master's expanding organization secretly for years. Void apologized courteously toward Inez while chimera monsters gathered near, misunderstanding her hostility towards Rogue and their mysterious leader entirely. Inez activated Shadow Rip destruction magic cautiously while Rogue observed, preparing another counterattack against overpowering enemies encircling their troops. Legurdo and Sinon suddenly reacted nervously when powerful magic erupted, forcing both fighters into immediate defensive movements versus hazardous assaults. Several rescued survivors appreciated Inez emotionally as Sinon realized everyone survived safely, calming tensions throughout the battlefield around nearby allies. Rogue apologized politely toward Legurdo while promising assistance for masters, showing determination despite arriving late throughout the hazardous clash encircling everyone. He commended Legurdo sincerely for enduring exhausting battles successfully, recognizing his condition while both fighters readied continuing resistance versus enemies. Rogue appreciated his allies confidently, while Sinon promised handling surviving enemies, promoting drained survivors protecting battlefield positions safely together. Rogue politely thanked Void for previous recommendations, explaining his successful promotion toward SSS ranked adventurer status throughout latest clashes over nations. Void listened silently beside Inez before changing conversation topics, maintaining composure as observing Rogue's unusual behavior suspiciously near during strained negotiations. Rogue questioned Void directly about his intentions inside neighboring territory, compelling uncomfortable silence between both dangerous state figures instantly alongside watching allies. Rogue asked Void cautiously, suspecting the Barla Empire planned interference inside his friend's homeland through concealed military operations. Void denied the accusation jokingly, claiming he simply assisted creatures assaulting the Saladia Empire while smiling assuredly before everyone. He congratulated Rogue's endurance while expressing confusion about 6 Chimera failures, questioning how Rogue fled their coordinated lethal assault unharmed. Void continued observing Rogue composedly, revealing additional concerns while maintaining confidence despite unforeseen developments occurring across the hazardous battlefield recently. Several Chimera suddenly attacked each other violently near, creating Void confusion while Rogue's party witnessed the creatures losing control. Void noticed Rogue's strange eyes and hidden presence, questioning suspicious dark magic while carefully examining Rogue's strange skills throughout fight. Inez ridiculed Void confidently, while Nidhogg verified their master abandoned involvement, creating Void confusion regarding Rogue's strange magical techniques. Rogue revealed his unique Necromancer skill called Necromancer's Resurrection, shocking Void while explaining the prohibited strength directing resurrected undead creatures. He clarified he overcame 6 chimeras and 3 trolls previously, then revived them through necromancy for military usage versus enemies. Rogue revealed thousands of undead soldiers encircling the battlefield, declaring himself commander of a massive immortal force containing revived creatures. Rogue explained his survival casually, revealing his exceptional SSS rank abilities defended him from serious injuries throughout perilous confrontations lately. Void connected Rogue's concealment magic with Kalfa, while suspecting Saladia Empire covertly hired necromancers despite public hate towards prohibited practitioners. Sinan and Ligurdo reacted nervously toward Rogue's necromancer identity, struggling emotionally as processing his concealed connection with perilous prohibited magic. Rogue understood Saladia Empire halted concealing important truths, creating Sinan and Ligurdo confusion regarding their nation's secret political decisions lately. Void ridiculed Rogue while discussing manipulation throughout history, claiming mighty nations directed countries and civilians according to selfish ambitions constantly. Rogue reacted with disbelief after learning Rogue practiced necromancy, struggling emotionally while recalling perilous stories encircling prohibited practitioners everywhere. He explained society dreaded necromancers since many abused corpses, ruined nations, and committed cruel experiments employing undead armies recklessly. Inez acknowledged Rogue resembled previous necromancers partly, although his methods differed from entirely corrupted practitioners directing revived corpses selfishly before. Rogue explained necromancy itself stayed neutral, while individual users resolved whether their powers protected individuals or caused suffering across nations. He proclaimed he fought beside trusted companions defending his friend's homeland, while Void watched the strange necromancer thoughtfully nearby. Void complained angrily because Rogue's arrival ruined important plans, causing unforeseen complications throughout ongoing military operations, including perilous creatures. Glared furiously toward Rogue, Void expressing intense frustration as recognizing Rogue continuously interfered with his cautiously arranged objectives and aspirations. Requested permission defending Rogue, Inez declaring foolish enemies endangering their homeland deserved elimination before creating additional destruction everywhere. Inez and Nidhogg prepared confidently for battle together, promising complete destruction versus enemies while supporting Rogue throughout perilous confrontation unfolding near. Void questioned whether Inez and Nidhogg resembled legendary beings, observing Rogue's allies cautiously, as considering their extraordinary strength and origins quietly. Void dismissed Rogue's determination arrogantly, believing the necromancer's resistance remained meaningless against overpowering imperial strength and hazardous magical skills. Rogue activated Necromancer's pledge, releasing control over undead soldiers and creatures while readying his immortal force for immediate fight. He officially summoned the immortal army beside Inez and Nidhogg, confronting Void straight with resurrected creatures and undead fighters encircling everyone. The immortal creatures charged aggressively toward enemy forces after Rogue commanded assaults, creating chaos throughout the battlefield against horrified Imperial troops. Imperial soldiers panicked desperately while undead armies approached relentlessly, forcing frightened warriors into defensive magical assaults versus approaching immortal foes. Undead skeleton soldiers attacked Imperial troops aggressively, astonishing frightened fighters while relentless assaults spread confusion throughout the chaotic battlefield instantly. Imperial soldiers screamed desperately while immortal undead forces overwhelmed defensive positions, forcing terrified fighters into retreat versus unceasing approaching foes. One skeleton warrior continued attacking vigorously, despite severe damage, demonstrating the frightening persistence of Rogue's resurrected immortal troops throughout combat. Imperial troops realized undead enemies never stopped moving, panicking while additional immortal troops continuously emerged throughout encircling battlefield areas. Void watched the immortal army cautiously with growing frustration, struggling to understand Rogue's overpowering necromancy and unceasing undead military power. Void realized ordinary fire enchantment attacks entirely failed against Inez, creating confusion while observing her overpowering defensive abilities cautiously. He released Ragnarok aggressively towards Inez, but she remained completely calm while confronting the devastating magical assault straight lacking hesitation. Void reacted with disbelief following Inez triggered Black Hole and Will-O-Wisp, realizing her magical skills exceeded expectations. Inez mocked Void assuredly, explaining weaker opponents could never understand the gigantic difference distancing their magical strength and fighting experience. Suddenly Nidhogg moved rapidly over the battlefield, interrupting fighting while near warriors responded with immediate shock and confusion. Nidhogg apologized casually after releasing excessive power accidentally, as Void fought recovering from the devastating magical impact throughout fighting. Void observed defeated soldiers and creatures surrounding him, realizing the fight unfolded completely opposite from his initial expectations and strategic calculations. Rogue and Inez confronted weakened Void straight, explaining clearly their combined strength surpassed his skills throughout the continuing battlefield confrontation. Void questioned Rogue's ambitions carefully while explaining Barla Empire treasured power over everything, creating Rogue visible confusion and concern immediately. Void proclaimed himself the strongest confidently despite injuries, refusing defeat while maintaining pride in his overpowering magical abilities and control. Imperial soldiers reported severe damage across multiple regions, explaining immortal monsters continuously regenerated despite repeated assaults versus their overpowering undead troops. Frightened troops begged Void for assistance frantically, admitting powerful trolls and dragons completely overwhelmed military defenses throughout crucial battlefront regions. Several loyal soldiers praised Void passionately, thinking only one esteemed sage possessed enough strength defending Barla Empire from complete destruction. Barla soldiers offered their magical power, requesting Void replenish his crystal and recover enough strength continuing dangerous fighting missions. Void accepted their support quietly, while devoted soldiers promised cooperation, readying together for another desperate confrontation versus Rogue's immortal force. Gathered loyal soldiers together confidently, Void demanding united resistance while Rogue and Inez observed cautiously, sensing dangerous magical changes advancing quickly. Inez glared furiously towards Void, accusing him of repeating hateful behavior again as eerie laughter spread loudly across the chaotic battlefield.